Hello everyone, welcome to PW English YouTube channel. How's everyone doing? Welcome to day 4 of our Neet 50-day challenge. How's everyone doing? Let me know in the comments if the audio and video are both clear. I don't see any comments so far. Good afternoon, Ammu, Praveen, Pranjali, Santosh, Sonu, Praveen. Good afternoon everyone, welcome to today's session. Let me know in the comments if the audio and video are both clear. Good afternoon, Gautami. Good afternoon, Shri Kumar. So, how is the Josh? This is your 4th lecture of the Neet 50-day challenge. How many of you are keeping up with all these lectures on a daily basis? How many of you are watching these lectures every day? It's clear. Shri Kumar, thank you so much. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Hi, Daud from Tumkur. Welcome to today's session. Hello, Akash. Hello, Radha Krishna. Hello, Kutti. Vimal Raj. Good afternoon to everyone who's joined. Okay, Santosh, I remember you from the previous session. Thank you for not giving up on your dreams and being focused and determined and disciplined. Okay, thank you so much, SK Creations, Arpita. All right, I think we have enough students and we can get started with today's session. As you all know, in the Neet 50-day challenge, we are picking up one chapter per session and we are summarizing the entire chapter and also solving important questions from that chapter. So, the chapter that we've picked up for today is Plant Kingdom. Alright, so this is a chapter from your 11th grade. I'm sure you've written tests from the concepts included in this chapter multiple times, and I think you must be, you must have a fair understanding of this chapter, but anyway, we will summarize it entirely in today's class. Alright? Yes, Daud, I remember you. You are from Sarthak batch. Yes, I remember. Welcome to the session. Good afternoon, Durgesh. Test syllabus, I'm not sure if we are conducting any tests in this batch. This is a free batch on YouTube, but I can talk to the team and find out if we can give you tests as well. And DPP, in this session itself, we are going to be solving multiple questions, and as a part of your notes, all of those questions also will be given to you so that you can revise them later. How do you get the notes is the next question. Whatever PPT I'm using right now for this session, that will be available in the form of a PDF in the description of this particular video. After the session is ended, probably in 1 or 2 hours, it will be available to you. Okay. So, Arvind, good afternoon. Why are you so upset, sick? What is that emoji supposed to mean? Yeah, that's what I just said. You will get it in the description of this video in the form of a PDF link and you can download it from there. Alright, so without any further delay, let's get today's session started. As I already said, we are going to be summarizing the chapter and also going to solve important questions from this chapter. Let's take a look at the syllabus first. You know that this year the syllabus has been rationalized, many chapters have been deleted and some concepts in some chapters have been deleted. According to the NMC updated syllabus, here's what we will have to study from this chapter. So you can see there's salient features and classification of plants into 5 major groups. Actually there are 5 major groups, but in this chapter you'll mostly be studying about 4 groups, which are algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes and gymnosperms in that exact order, right? So you must know 3 to 5 salient and distinguishing features, and at least 2 examples of each category is what is given here. But I would suggest you remember all of the examples that we have in this chapter. Alright. Parvez is asking which batch this is. This is not really a batch. This is a series that we are running for free on YouTube. It's called 50-day Neet 50-day challenge. As I had displayed on my first slide here, it's called the Neet 50 days challenge, where you will have physics, chemistry, botany, zoology, all of the subjects covering all of the chapters. Alright. So I hope that gives you clarity on the syllabus. In your NCRT, in your old NCRT, there is a concept called life cycles, right? Different types of alternation of generation that you can see in plants. Like you have haplontic, diplontic, haplodiplontich and all of that, but that part is deleted from your syllabus. That is given by NMC. Also, earlier you used to study a little bit in detail about angiosperms in this chapter itself. Right now that also has been reduced because you have 3 entire huge chapters dedicated for the study of angiosperms, which is morphology of flowering plants, anatomy of flowering plants, and sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So, we will not be focusing much on angiosperms in this chapter. Alright. Shaheen, good afternoon. Divya, we are teaching every chapter. We are covering every chapter. You don't have to worry about that. This is the 3rd chapter. 2 chapters have already been covered. You can see it under the live tab on our channel. Alright. So, Shagufta is asking me to repeat. What do you want me to repeat? We've not even started yet. I'm just summarizing about the syllabus. So, this is a screenshot of the syllabus from the NMC updated notice itself. Alright. So, let's take a look at the trend. How many chapters from how many concepts have been asked over the years? I'm going to be considering from the year 2016 until the year 2023 because 2016 was the year when Neet was made the only entrance exam for MBBS throughout the country. Before that, also you can find Neet questions and AIPMT questions, but the problem is earlier there used to be a lot of questions that were asked outside your syllabus. From 2016 onwards, it's mostly restricted to your NCERT. Alright. So, Shri Kumar, what do you mean? Hi Pranjali. Hi Prerna. Okay. So, here's a table. You will get this in your notes. As you can see, from the year 2016 to 2023, in 2016, Neet was held twice. In 2020, Neet was held twice, phase 1 and phase 2. I've added the number of questions, total number of questions that were asked in each year. In 2016, phase 1, there were 2 questions. In the second phase, there were 2 questions again. In 17 and 18, there were 3 questions each. You can see how, on an average, you will get 2 to 3 questions asked per year from this chapter. There was one year where almost 5 questions were asked from this one chapter alone, right? So, this chapter is very, very important. If 3 questions are asked, that means you're getting how much? 12 marks from this chapter alone. And it's not even a chapter that's very difficult to understand. Of course, I understand there are a lot of names that you have to remember. But once you try and come up with ways to memorize the examples, this chapter is very, very easy to score. Questions from this chapter are very easy to answer. Alright, now I've also, alongside the number of questions, I've added another column where you can see how many, which concepts the questions are asked from. Wherever I've written A, it is algae. If I've written B, it means bryophytes. G means gymnosperms. And P means pteridophytes. Durgesh, the chapter that we're dealing with right now is called Plant Kingdom. It is the 3rd chapter in your 11th grade syllabus. Alright. So, you can see how there are sometimes questions asked from one of these groups alone, either algae alone or bryophytes alone. You can also see how there are sometimes questions asked which are mixed, includes gymnosperms and pteridophytes, sometimes includes algae, bryophytes, gymnosperms, more than one group. So, you should have a thorough understanding of all these groups of plants so that you can maximize your score in your NEET exam. Alright. How long will this lecture be? Ideally, it should be for 3 hours, but sometimes it might extend 3 hours. It might go beyond 3 hours, or sometimes it might be less than 3 hours. So, it depends. It's around 3 hours. Thanks, Arya. Okay, Snehashish has already started writing the examples. Brilliant. All of these are examples of your brown algae, right? Okay, so let's continue with the chapter. In the previous lecture, which was previous botany lecture, you learnt about a chapter called biological classification. In biological classification, you learnt about various systems of classification, right? There's 2 kingdom classification, 3 kingdom, 4 kingdom and all of that. And the final most accepted type of classification of living organisms is the 5 kingdom classification that was proposed by R.H. Whitaker, right? So, in those 5 kingdoms, you have Monera, you have Protista, you have fungi, you have Plantae and you have Animalia. In Monera, you have all unicellular prokaryotic organisms. In Protista, you have all unicellular eukaryotic organisms. In kingdom fungi, you have multicellular eukaryotic organisms that have saprophytic mode of nutrition. They are absorptive heterotrophs. In kingdom Plantae, you have multicellular eukaryotic autotrophic organisms or photosynthetic organisms. And in kingdom Animalia, you have multicellular eukaryotic organisms that have ingestive type of heterotrophy, right? Yeah, I have covered a couple of PYQs as well. Can I just call you Shisha because I don't know the right way to pronounce your name? क्या समझ में नहीं आ रहा है? अभी तक मैंने शुरू भी नहीं किया है. Okay, great. So, yeah. So, in this chapter, we are going to be covering only kingdom Plantae. About fungi, Protista, Monera, you've already learnt in biological classification. About animal kingdom, you've already learnt in the chapter Animal Kingdom that has already been covered by Vindhya ma'am. So, in this class, we are going to learn from kingdom Plantae. Alright, Musafir is asking, can I start from here? Yes, you can start. There's not much content I've discussed before this. Stay focused and start from this point. Alright, we're going to start the chapter in just a bit, in about a minute. Okay, is everyone ready? All of you must stay focused. Though this chapter seems very easy, it can get confusing. So, stay focused, pay attention, forget about everything else. If you're watching this on your mobile phones, mute all the notifications from all these unnecessary apps like WhatsApp and Snapchat and all of that so that your 100% focus and attention is going to be here. As it is, we may have probably wasted 2 years, right? So, we have very little time spent and we can't afford to lose it. So, how is the Joe? Should we get started? Is everyone ready with your notebooks and pens and undivided attention? Rasika, the name of this chapter is Plant Kingdom. The probability is, Snehashish, about 2 to 3 questions you can expect. Like I showed earlier, sometimes even 5 questions have been asked from this chapter. Alright, great. Everyone seems very ready. Suk is asking how much time of lecture. It might go on for about 3 hours. It's not a lot of time, right? We'll make it interesting. There's a lot of questions lined up which you will be answering. So 3 hours will seem just like 3 minutes. Don't worry about it. All right, so Durgesh is also ready. Let's get started. There is in the initial part of the chapter, in the introductory part of this chapter, different types of classification. So earlier, people used to classify plants based on very few characteristics like where does it live? Is it in water? Is it on land? If it's in water, it's aquatic. If it's on land, it is terrestrial. Very simple characters. Also, is it very thin and flexible stem? Then it's a herb. Is it bushy? Then it's a shrub. Does it have a thick trunk? Then it's a tree. Based on very few characters, there was classification going on. Okay. So, but eventually, what happened was, various scientists attempted various ways to classify plants. Of that, we are going to study about 3 important types of classification systems that were used in the past to classify angiosperms specifically. There's no link for poll. Is there no pinned link here? Just give me 1 minute. I will have it added immediately. Just give me 1 minute. Sir, could you please add that Unity link? Yeah, thank you. As we talk, it will be added. You don't have to worry about that. Before we start with the poll questions, that will be done for you. All right. So, there are 3 different systems of classification about which you have to study. The first one is artificial system. This is one of the earliest systems of classification. What basically happened here was, in order to classify angiosperms, they used characters that were very visible to the naked eye. Very obvious differences they could see. They used to use those criteria or those characters to classify angiosperms into different groups. So only gross superficial morphological characters. What are some of those characters? Like I already mentioned, habit. What are they like? Are they herbs, shrubs? That is one thing. Color of different parts of the plant, number and shapes of leaves. These are some of the characters that earlier taxonomists used to classify angiosperms. Okay, so this is the initial, one of the earliest systems of classification. Example for that is the Linnaeus' classification of angiosperms. Basically, he focused on, or he considered vegetative characters or the structure of androecium of the flower. I'm sure you all know what an androecium is. Androecium is the male reproductive part of the flower. How many of them are present? Those were some of, how many stamens are present? Those were some of the characters that Linnaeus used in order to classify angiosperms. At that time, probably microscopy was not very much evolved. They could not look inside the plant cells and identify the ultrastructure. They could not identify or find out about the anatomy. So all of that was not possible. So whatever was visible to the naked eye, they made use of the same characters in order to classify plants. It was okay to classify it using those, but it had some drawbacks as well. What are some of the drawbacks or disadvantages of using just a few morphological characters to classify angiosperms? Number one, sometimes because they were considering only very few characters, it was possible that some species that were closely related, which probably did not look very similar, but they were closely related, were put into very distinct, different groups. Alright, so this is one disadvantage. Second thing is, it gave equal weightage to vegetative as well as sexual characters. What are the vegetative characters? The characters of your root, stem and leaves, and the sexual characters are your floral characters, right? We know that with changes in environment, the vegetative characters could change, but the sexual characters do not change so easily. When you're giving equal weightage to vegetative as well as sexual characters, it is a bias, right? So these are the two disadvantages or demerits of natural system of classification. Alright, now tell me quickly, what were the criteria that Linnaeus or people in those times used to classify angiosperms in the natural system? Just a few morphological features. Whatever is visible to the naked eye, that is what was being used. Because back then, microscopes had not, been invented. Alright? अशोक पटोले, थोड़ा हिंदी में भी एक्सप्लेन करो ना, मेरा हिंदी बहुत उतना अच्छा नहीं है, तो स्लोली इंग्लिश में ही बात करूंगी, आपको समझ में आ जाएगा, ठीक है? Up until this point, is everything clear about artificial system of classification? Okay, for those of you who are asking how to join Unity, there is a link right here, pinned by Physics Wala English channel. Can you see it? Do you see it? You have to click on it and then you have to enroll. Just give me a minute, I'll show you how. Okay, so everyone's saying it's clear so far. I'm pasting the link here again. Oh wait, I don't think I'm able to copy it properly. You can just see that link that is pinned here. You have to sign in and you will be able to use it without any issue. Alright. So Praveen is asking when NCERT line by line will come for molecular basis chapter. It will be coming very soon. Don't worry about it. In this week, you will get it. Okay. So now, since artificial system of classification is very clear, we'll talk about the next system of classification, which is called natural system of classification. So, with time, microscopy had advanced and people could look inside the plants. So, what are the cells like? What are the different types of tissues? How is their arrangement? So, all of that they could see with the help of microscopes. So, in natural system of classification, what they also considered along with morphological features is the ultrastructure, anatomy, embryology and phytochemistry. All of these also could be considered, and they did consider all of these while classifying angiosperms into different groups. One example for this is the classification system that was given by Bentham and Hooker. This is an important point for you to remember. One example for artificial system is your classification system that was given by Linnaeus. Artificial only morphology, natural morphology, yes, but along with that you also have study of anatomy, ultrastructure, embryology, phytochemistry, all of that. Example for that is your Bentham and Hooker's classification. Alright, now let's talk about the third type of classification, which is your phylogenetic classification. Whenever we talk about phylogeny, you should immediately think of evolutionary relationships. Alright, so phylogenetic system of classification has one other thing that they are considering while classifying, which is your evolutionary relationships. Okay, so whenever evolutionary relationships are also considered during classification, you call that the phylogenetic system of classification. Basically, the assumption here is that we all evolved from one kind of organism, right? So, it assumes that organisms belonging to the same taxa have evolved from a common ancestor. There is written that no video. What do you mean, Omu? You're not able to see the video? Try to refresh or go sit in a place where there is better internet connectivity. Is anybody else facing the issue where you can't see the video properly? Anyone else? Let me know in the comments. Is the audio and video clear? On Unity, it's written as no video. No, okay. I'm not sure. When we go to a question, we'll try answering a question and see if there's an issue or not. Okay. So up until this point, everything is clear. Artificial, only morphology, natural, morphology, anatomy, ultrastructure, everything. Phylogenetic, everything plus evolutionary relationships. Alright. Linnaeus' classification is artificial, Bentham and Hooker's classification is natural. Examples you have to remember. Now, sometimes when there's no fossil evidence, we rely on other sources also for classification. Which are those? There are three such. You will have to remember: numerical taxonomy, cytotaxonomy, chemotaxonomy. Numerical is about numbers, right? So, over here what we do is, we list out all of the characters. Like you're trying to compare, you're trying to fit in one plant that you've identified, that you found, you want to group it, you want to classify it in some group, okay? So, what you can do is, you can list out all of the characters and give it codes and numbers. For example, let's say there are three plants, plant A, plant B, plant C. Plant A is a plant that you have just found somewhere, you have just discovered it. You want to find out if this plant is closely related to plant B, or is it closely related to plant C. If you find that out, it's easier for you to classify this plant. You will find out in which taxa can this belong. So what can you do then? You will list out all the characters of this plant and you will see how much similarity is there of plant A with plant B, and compare the similarities of that plant A shares with plant C. Okay, so while you're comparing similarities, dissimilarities, you will give it numbers and codes. At the end, you will get a percentage similarity. So whichever plant is more similar, whichever plant has higher percentage of similarity with plant A, you can say that that is more closely related to the plant A. That is useful in while classifying plants. Okay, so that is what we call numerical taxonomy. Over here, the advantage is simultaneously you can consider a lot of characters. Okay, thousands of characters, hundreds of characters can be simultaneously considered, and at the end you will get a percentage of similarity between two different plants, and that will help you in classification. Alright, now I hope it is clear. Any doubts here? excuse me. Durgesh is asking if we can watch recorded video of previous lectures. Yes, you can. All you have to do is click on the PW English channel, which you already have. Go to the live tab. In the live tab, you can see all of the videos, all of the lectures that have been conducted already. So after this lecture, you can go watch them at your own pace. If you want it faster, you can increase the speed. If you want it a little slower, you can decrease the speed. However, at your own convenience, you can watch it later as well. Alright, Santosh has no doubt. Great. Now let's move on and talk about cytotaxonomy. Cyto means what? Cyto means cell, right? Cytotaxonomy, we will study information like the number of chromosomes, the structure of chromosomes, and the behavior of chromosomes. Based on that, we are going to classify plants. And finally, chemotaxonomy. Chemo means chemicals, right? So you will study the different chemical constituents that you find in plants. If at all there is any confusion, to resolve such doubts and confusions, you can use the chemicals that are present in plants to classify. Is that clear? Battu Srivastava is in 10th grade and he is already aspiring to be a doctor. Great. You've started early. All the very best. Hope you become Dr. Battu very soon. Any doubts so far? Hi Pooja Rajput. Good afternoon. Okay. Pooja is Rohit. Okay, fine. Hi Tanmay. Good afternoon. Okay Kishore, you still have some more time. You can better your score. You can enhance your score. Take more frequent tests. After every test, you have to sit down with your paper and analyze where you're going wrong. Are you getting negative marking because you guessed it? Are you getting negative marking because you didn't read the question correctly? Is it because you haven't understood the concept? What is the scene? Exactly, you have to sit down and find out. Alright? So, I will make a strategy video very soon on how you should analyze your mock test papers. Alright, up until this point, if everything is clear, then we will move forward. There are a couple of questions based on these classification systems. Let's see how many of you will answer it correctly. I'm going to turn on the poll for 30 seconds right now. Let's see how many of you will answer it correctly. The artificial system of classification is based on one or few anatomical characters, one or few morphological features, many morphological features, many internal features. What do you think is the correct answer? For those of you who are attending this session for the first time live, in order to participate in the poll, you should have enrolled on Unity, and also your answer you should comment in the chat box. Only the option, you don't have to write it entirely, just like you can see how others are answering right now. You just have to add the option there and it will be picked up by Unity. Many of you are saying B, but there's some confusion between B and C. The correct answer over here is option B. Brilliant. 87% of you all have answered correctly. Priyanshi is on top of our leaderboard. She has answered in like less than 6 seconds, which is great. Praveen Nagapatula has answered in 10 seconds. Akash also has answered. Many of you all have answered correctly. Great, guys. So here, what decides who's on top of the leaderboard is how many answers they answer, how many questions they answered correctly, and also the speed with which they are answering. So if two individuals have answered the same number of questions correctly, then later it will check for how quickly the question was answered. So that will decide your leaderboard. Currently, after the first question, we can see Priyanshi is on top of the leaderboard, and then you have Praveen and Akash in 2 and 3 spots. Doesn't matter. All of you who have answered, congratulations. All of you who have participated, congratulations. Okay, there shouldn't be any confusion here. Of course, it's only morphological features because this was at a time where there was no microscopes, anatomy and all could not have been studied. They considered very few morphological characters. So the correct answer for this question is option B. All right. Now, let's move on to our next question. This is a statement based question. Whenever such questions have to be answered, you have to have complete focus while reading the question. When you're tensed, when you're anxious, if you read such questions, it's possible that you will skip words. Okay? So, Priyanshi has a question, confusion in B and C from the previous question. We'll discuss that. Let's finish this and then we'll discuss. Okay? So, see the questions properly, see the options properly and answer. What is given to us in the first statement? Number and codes are assigned to a few of the selected characters in numerical taxonomy. Is it true or false? Is it true or false? Is it only to a few of the selected characters? I told you can consider as many as 100 questions. You can consider as many as 100 questions at a time 100 characters simultaneously. So it's not just a few characters that makes this this statement not correct. Phylogenetic classification systems are based on evolutionary relationships between various organisms. That is a correct question. Correct statement. Cytotaxonomy is based on cytological information like chromosome number, structure and behavior. This also is correct. A and B are incorrect? No. Only C is correct? No. Only A is correct? Only A is incorrect? Yes, only A is incorrect. B and C are incorrect. So over here, the correct answer to this question is option C. Let's see how many of you answered this question correctly. Only one person, Vimal Raj, has answered this question correctly. Where was the doubt? I think you all got confused in the first statement, right? You saw number and codes, numerical taxonomy and you answered it correctly. But few of the selected characters is not correct, right? So the correct answer for this question is option C. Is it clear right now? Have all of you understood where you made the mistake? Options are confusing. Yes, that is how you should expect a question in a competitive exam like Neet. If it's very direct, very easy, then everybody is going to crack Neet, right? Why is it so difficult? Why are more than 2 lakh people struggling to get seats that are just more than 1 lakh? So this is why we're giving you practice also. Yes, B is also correct. In option C, it's given only A is incorrect. Neet aspirant 2K24. Is it possible to crack Neet in 2 months? How can you be a fresher and a repeater at the same time? Are you a fresher or are you a dropper? Right. Tanishk, very nice name. You're a dropper. So if you have conceptual clarity, Neet aspirant, what's your real name? If you have conceptual clarity, if you've understood all the concepts well, you have time for revision and you have to practice a lot of MCQs and take a lot of mock tests. After each mock test, you have to analyze your result, find out where you're going wrong, what is your weak area, work on it. It is possible. I do not want to lie. If you've not studied at all, you just have a little, few more days. It's not possible to start from scratch. However, we are trying to do it. We are trying to explain all the concepts in detail. So, it should be helpful. Thanks, Hiteshwari. Thank you, Sampath. Okay, so this is clear now, no doubts, right? Is this question clear? Now let's move on to our next question. The Bentham and Hooker's classification. Which is Bentham and Hooker's classification? Who can tell me? Which is Bentham and Hooker's classification? What do we call it? Is it artificial, natural, phylogenetic? What is it an example for? Bentham and Hooker's classification is an example for natural system of classification, right? Bentham and Hooker's classification is classification of taxa based on external and internal structures. It is artificial system of classification. It is phylogenetic system of classification, similar to Linnaeus's classification. I can see Some of you are answering it as A, some of you are answering it as B. Many of you are answering as A, some of you are answering as B. There is some confusion, we'll discuss that. So the correct answer to this question is option A. 73% of you all have answered this question correctly. Gautami is on top of the list. Sukh is second. Suresh is third. Praveen also has answered correctly. But like I said, see, what decides who's on top is how quickly they answer. So Santosh, Akash, Sabrina, Priyanshi, Vimal, Arpita, Rasika, all of you have answered the question correctly. Great. That means you've understood this concept. Hey, wait, what was that? I ticked A only as the correct answer, no? A is the correct answer here. Bentham and Hooker's classification is based on external as well as internal structures. So the correct answer here is option A. Artificial system of classification, it is only a few external features. Phylogenetic is external plus internal plus evolutionary relationship. Similar to Linnaeus' classification, no. Linnaeus' classification is an example for artificial system of classification. So the correct answer for this question is option A. Any doubts here? Anybody has any doubts here? Keyboard is not working properly. You were supposed to type A and then it typed B. What really happened? What is the issue? All right. So no doubts. Let's move on. This is a very simple concept. Okay. Again, let's see. I'll give you like 30 seconds. Very direct question. Artificial system of classification is based on few observable characters, natural affinities among organisms, evolutionary relationships and fossil evidence. Artificial system. Artificial system is the first one. Remember, A is the first alphabet. Artificial system is the most ancient type of classification system that we are learning about, where there was no microscope. So it's only a few observable morphological characters. So the correct answer for this question is option A. I think I will see 100% correct result. Yes. This is going to bring so much joy on a teacher's face, I can't tell you. So everybody who's attempted this question has answered it correctly. On top of the list right now we have Akash, Tuhin, Sukhpreet, and then we have Sabrina, Roshni, Tanishk, Santosh, everyone else. All right. So I can see after every question, the top one, whoever is on the top of the list, that is changing. You can see just among, I think, 30-40 people who are watching right now, there's so much competition question after question. So you can imagine the amount of competition there will be in the actual Neet exam, right? There are 20 to 21 lakh students writing. So, yeah. Quick question. Artificial system of classification based on andrecium structure was given by Linnaeus, Bentham, Hooker, Thaktajan, Eichler. I will not give you much time. This is a very easy question. I hope all of you have answered this correctly. Yes. Okay. There are some mistakes though. I think 1 or 2 of you have answered it incorrectly. I can't really see. I only see A here. Okay. So Sukhpreet is on top of the list right now, followed by Priyanshi and then Tanishk, then Ragul, Santosh, Tuhin. All right. So most of you all have answered this correctly. Linnaeus is the correct answer. Is this concept clear? Right now it might seem like you've understood it, but this is a memory based concept. You will have to keep revising frequently for you to remember it till the exam date. Okay. So keep that in mind in your schedule. Excuse me. Save some time for revision of such concepts. All right. So with that, we have finished the classification systems. Now let's dive into the actual different groups of plants. So under plant kingdom, we have 5 different groups, which are algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, angiosperms. Just like in vertebrata, you have fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals. Similarly, you have algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, angiosperms. This is in the order of how they evolved. First, algae evolved from algae, bryophytes, from bryophytes, pteridophytes, and so on. Okay, so here algae is the simplest form of plant. Angiosperms are the most advanced group of plants. I try to go on. Okay, so in this chapter we are only be going to focus on algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms. Angiosperms we are not going to do because like I mentioned earlier, we have 3 entire chapters dedicated for angiosperms. बिल्कुल मिलेंगे अमित. So let's start off with algae. Is everyone ready? Everyone still focused, still attentive? You're not reminded of going to the washroom, going and eating food, going to drink water? Are you stuck to your seat? Shall we move on? Yes, Priyanshi, right. Great, great. All right. So, algae are the most primitive group of plants. If it has to be a plant, then obviously, if it has to be included in the plant kingdom, then obviously it has to be photosynthetic, it has to be eukaryotic, it has to be multicellular. We already know this from the previous chapter. If it has to be photosynthetic, then obviously it will have pigments, right? It will have chloroplast, and within the chloroplast it will have pigments. So, what would be the characteristic features of algae? One thing, they are chlorophyll bearing. Of course, unless they are chlorophyll bearing, they cannot photosynthesize, right? So, they will have chlorophyll in it. I already mentioned that this is the simplest type of plant. So, here you can see the plant body is thalloid. We come across this term thalloid very frequently. Normally, when you think about plants, we think about angiosperms or gymnosperms, where you have roots, where you have a well-defined stem, and you have branches and leaves and flowers and all of that. But algae are also plants, but their plant body is quite different from the angiosperm plants that we see, because over here, when we say it is thalloid, in this plant body, there is no clear demarcation or differentiation of root, stem and leaves. So when root, stem and leaves are not clearly differentiated, we call it thallus. Since this is very primitive, that differentiation is not yet there. Alright, so this is thalloid. Of course, it has to be autotrophic. Autotrophic means what? They are capable of making their own food. That is what all plants do, right? By making use of the chlorophyll and other pigments, they are capable of synthesizing their own food. They are very simple organisms, simplest of plants, and their plant body is thalloid in nature. Thalloid means not differentiated into root, stem and leaves. Keep that in mind. Alright, that is your first point. Where can you find them? You can think of them like fishes of the animal kingdom, right? They need water. Algae also are largely aquatic. Majorly, they are found in water bodies. They could be found in freshwater bodies like rivers and ponds, or they could even be found in marine environments like oceans and seas. Mostly, they are found in these water bodies. But even if they are found on the land, the region has to be moist. They are found on moist terrestrial habitats and in water. Alright, so they are largely aquatic. It could be freshwater and marine organisms. They occur in variety of other habitats that are moist. For example, they could be found on moist stones. I'm sure you've seen this, right? Near beaches where water is constantly hitting and the rocks are moist, near water bodies, you can see that. Moist stones. On moist soil, where there's too much water logging, you find yourself slipping, right? So that is because of algae that you find there and the mucus that is present around them. Moist soil. Even on moist wood, you can find algae growing. Okay? Thanks, Lee. Is that what your name is? Thank you. चित्रांजन, मेरा हिंदी बहुत खराब है तो नहीं. This is a pure English channel. So here mode of communication, mode of instruction will be in English. Anyway, I think you'll write your NEET exam also in English. I'll try to speak a little slowly so that you can follow. Okay. So if you want to learn in Hindi, Jagdish Thakur and Chitranjan Kumar, if you want to learn in Hindi, then there is a Hindi channel also, but you can study from there. Okay. Is it clear? This is very easy to remember, right? Wherever they are found in aquatic habitats, mostly, but if they are found on land, wherever there's water, you can find them. Next, algae can be found associated with other organisms as well. Everyone knows about lichens for sure. What are lichens? Lichens are associations of algae with fungi. They are symbiotic associations where algae and fungi live together. You've learned about it in the chapter biological classification. Algal partner is called the phycobiont and the fungal partner is called the mycobiont, right? So what basically happens here is they cannot live without each other, like you and your mobile phone and like you and your Instagram, right? So they cannot live without each other. Fungus provides shelter to algae, helps in absorption of water and minerals, and in return, algae, which is capable of synthesizing food, will make food for itself and gives a little bit of it to the fungus as well. Alright? And look at this cutie. This is a sloth bear, very cute sloth bear. It is, you can see that its fur is green in color. The reason its fur is green in color is because on its body, it's growing algae, green algae. So what happens because of that? Its body will appear green. So if its body appears green, it is advantageous to the sloth because predators like jaguars cannot find it and feed on it. In return, algae are provided with a safe place to grow. Okay, so this is called a symbiotic relationship. Okay, is it clear? No problem, Jagdish. Don't apologize. It's okay. So sometimes algae have symbiotic association with other organisms as well. Two examples are of lichens and the sloth bear. Now, let's talk about the difference in the size and form of algae. Algae come in so many different forms and its size also is variable. Some of them are colonial. Sumit, I have some tricks lined up to remember the examples. Going forward, wherever relevant, I will give you those tricks. Alright. Okay. So, colonial alga. Colony means what? You've heard of colonies in with regard to bacteria, right? Bacteria, one cell becomes two cells, two cells becomes four cells, and then they make a group of cells. That's called a colony. Similarly, there is colonial alga that you can find in green alga as well. Its name is volvox. As you can see here, every little cell here it's similar to a chlamydomonas cell. Many such cells come together, form a colony. This is called colonial form. Similarly, you have filamentous forms as well. What is a filament? When cells are arranged end to end like this and form a long thread-like structure, we call it a filament. Some algae are filamentous in nature as well. For example, you have Eulothrix and you have, here you can't see, this is Spirogyra. Why is Spirogyra called Spirogyra? Because you can see its chloroplast is kind of spiral. The green thing there is spiral. That's why it's called Spirogyra. Alright? Some of them are massive plants. You won't believe me. Some of these algae, which are thought to be very primitive organisms, the simplest form of plants, they, despite not having xylem and phloem, despite not having vascular tissues at all, are sometimes capable of growing as tall as 10 meters in height. Examples for that are your kelps. After your board exams are over, after your Neet exam is over, if you find the time, look it up on YouTube and see what underwater forests are. Just like how you can find forests on land, inside water, these brown algae, huge brown algae plants will form forest-like structures. We call them underwater forests. And within those forests, you can see a wide variety of organisms thriving successfully. Alright? So, very massive plant bodies also you have. We call them kelps. Okay? Now, let's talk about how reproduction takes place in algae. First, Vegetative reproduction can take place, asexual reproduction can take place, and sexual reproduction also can take place. In vegetative reproduction, how exactly does reproduction occur? It can occur by fragmentation. We just saw how there are some organisms that are filamentous, right? Like Eulothrix and Spirogyra. If in this filament, this cell dies for some reason, or this filament gets cut because somebody walked past it or some organism walked past it. So this became two fragments. Fragments means what? Pieces. For some reason, if a long thread becomes fragments, then each organism, each individual fragment is equivalent to a new organism. Okay? So this is one way of reproduction. The second type of asexual reproduction is by the formation of spores. What kind of spores are formed? A type of spores called zoospores are formed. Zoo means what? Generally, zoology means studying about animals, right? Animals are known for their ability to move. So similarly, zoospores are those spores that have flagella and they can move. Okay, so these are flagellated. Whenever these flagellated spores germinate, then you get a new thallus. That is a type of asexual reproduction. What is sexual reproduction? In sexual reproduction, you see the formation and fusion of gametes. Male and female gametes form and those gametes fuse. What is your name, manufacturer? Whatever doubt is there, please ask me. Please don't spam. Sukhpreet, what is your question? I didn't understand. Okay, so sexual reproduction, as you know, will have formation and fusion of gametes. Alright. This can occur in three ways. First is isogamous, second is anisogamous, and third is oogamous. In isogamous, iso means same or similar. In isogamous, both the gametes will be similar morphologically. They will look alike. They may be flagellated or they may not have flagella. If they are similar and they have flagella, one example for that is seen in Eulothrix. In Spirogyra also you see isogamy where the male gamete and the female gamete appear similar, but over here it's not flagellated. These examples are important, you have to remember them. Okay, many times questions have been asked from this concept. Anisogamous. Anisogamous means what? Male gamete is large, female gamete is small. There is difference in size. They may or may not be flagellated. Oogamous means what? In oogamous, you have large female gamete that is not motile. You have a male gamete that is relatively small, which is motile. This is oogamous. Oogamous can be seen in Fucus and Volvox. Anisogamous can be seen in Eudorina. Isogamous flagellated Eulothrix. Isogamous non-flagellated Spirogyra. These have to be clear. You have to remember this very clearly. Okay, now let's move on. What is the importance of algae? Economically, how is it important? Ecologically, for our environment, how is it important? First of all, algae are photosynthetic organisms. Like all plants, algae also perform photosynthesis. As a product of photosynthesis, along with food, oxygen is also produced, right? So, since most algae are aquatic, because of release of oxygen, they increase the level of dissolved oxygen in their immediate environment. Why is it important? There are animals living in that water body. Animals require water for their animals require oxygen for their respiration, so they can pick up this oxygen and use it for their respiratory needs. Second, in photosynthesis, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is picked up and you convert it into glucose, right? Plants convert it into glucose. Since this is a photosynthetic organism, even over here carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is fixed into glucose. So the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere is reduced. At least half of the total carbon dioxide in earth is fixed by algae. That is why we call that the major producers. Mostly there are algae in these oceans, right? They are floating on the surface of the water body. They will get a lot of sunlight and they will photosynthesize, fixing carbon dioxide and immediately releasing oxygen to the atmosphere. What is the name of which process, Jorox? Photosynthesis? What did you not understand? Just give me a minute. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah, that is photosynthesis. Okay, so what is the other thing? They are primary producers. Carbon dioxide is removed, oxygen is released into the water body, increasing the oxygen concentration in the immediate environment. Also, we get food from this, right? They convert carbon dioxide into glucose and we get energy-rich compounds, which is the basis of our food chains. Many species of algae like Porphyra, Laminaria and Sargassum, these are brown algae. They are called seaweeds. Mostly in the Southeast Asian countries like Japan and Philippines, this is enjoyed as a delicacy. They like seaweed. They make so many different food items out of seaweed. So it is consumed as food in many parts of the world. Hydrocolloids. Hydrocolloids are substances that you can find outside the cell wall of these algae. In brown algae, you can find a hydrocolloid called algin. Basically, it will have water holding capacity. Okay, it will hold on to water molecules so that these algal cells do not dry up. And then you have carrageenan, that red algae that is present outside the wall of red algae. Both of these are of economic importance. Whenever we make tarts and jellies and all of that, we use agar, right? Gelatin we use. That is very similar to these hydrocolloids. All right. Agar, like I already mentioned, agar is what we use in baking. Like if you have to make jellies and tarts and all of that, agar is used. Agar is obtained from two red algae species, Gelidium and Gracilaria. Chlorella is a unicellular green alga. This is very rich in protein, so it is used as a protein supplement. Apparently, even people who travel to outer space carry this as a protein supplement and use it as food. Okay. Ayush is asking, what is colonial alga? Colonial alga is a group of alga that kind of form like a colony. Chlamydomonas, you know, right? Chlamydomonas is a unicellular green alga that has a cup-shaped chloroplast. In Volvox, which is an example for colonial alga, many such chlamydomonas-like cells come together and they form a colony. This colony exists as one unit. Okay, so it's, you can think very primitive type of tissue organization, very, very primitive. Okay. Spirulina is a blue-green alga that is used as a protein supplement. Chlorella is a green alga. About blue-green algae, we have learnt in Monera in biological classification. In earlier versions of NCRT, over here spirulina also was mentioned, but later they removed that because it's not a real green alga, it's not a true algae, it's a blue-green algae or a cyanobacterium. So it is not given in your textbooks anymore. In the advanced updated version, you do not have spirulina. Is that clear? Carrageenan and colonial algae are not the same. Colonial algae example is Volvox. Like here I showed you. Here you can see many cells living together, coming together, forming a colony. Carrageenan is something that you will find outside the cell wall of red algae. Okay. I hope up until this point everything is clear. Kelps are brown algae. Very tall plants. They are brown algae. They are called, they form underwater forests. That's what I said earlier. Tejaswini, I've pretty much tried to cover every point there is in NCERT. So I hope this should suffice. Differs from species to species. Jorox, is that your real name? Some of them can grow up to several meters in height. There's no specific example. About 100 meters is what is probably given you in your textbooks, but it differs. Just like in humans, we can't specify how tall humans will grow. I am 5'3", you could be 6 feet long, right? So that way, from species to species, even within species, it will be variable. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I have a little bit of sore throat. If you're putting on earphones, it might ring while I sneeze or cough. Apologies. Okay. So now let's talk about classification of algae. Algae are classified based on what kind of pigments they have. Because of the kind of pigments they have, they produce different colors, right? So majorly we can categorize algae into 3 groups. One is red algae, one is brown algae, one is green algae. Green algae, brown algae, red algae. So because it should kind of stay in your memory for a long time, I have tried to use the same colors everywhere. Okay. So you have green algae, brown algae, red algae. We'll be learning about the features of each of these and examples for each of these. Over here, what's important to remember is there are, what can I say? 2 very important things in which these different groups of algae differ from each other. Firstly, obviously, if the color is different, then the type of pigment they are carrying is different. So in each of these, there will be a different kind of pigments present. Secondly, what kind of reserve food do they possess? That is the second important difference between these 3 groups of algae. Apart from that, there are some other differences as well. Going forward, we will learn about that. Right now, we will start off with green algae. Green algae is also called chlorophyceae. Chlorophyceae is more a technical term. In common language, we call it green algae. Over here, the plant body could either be unicellular, colonial, or filamentous. It could be a single cell, as in the case of Chlamydomonas. It could be colonial, as in the case of Volvox. It could be filamentous, as Spirogyra and Eulothrix. Okay. Hi Lakshay, good afternoon. Welcome to the session. Bhavesh, what is UR? Oh my God. Okay. So this is grass green in color. This is grass green in color. The reason it is grass green in color is because of the presence of pigments chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. What I want you to remember at this point is we have 3 different groups of algae: green algae, brown algae, red algae. But all of them have one pigment in common. All plants that are capable of photosynthesis will have one pigment in common, which is chlorophyll A. Chlorophyll A is there in green algae, red algae, brown algae. In green algae, in addition to chlorophyll A, you also have chlorophyll B. And it's because of this combination of pigments, we see that these algae are grass green in color. If it has pigments, obviously, if it is eukaryotic, then the pigments will be located in the chloroplast itself, right? So this will possess chloroplast, and the chloroplast shape will also vary. In Chlamydomonas, we have seen cup-shaped chloroplast. In Spirogyra, we have seen spiral chloroplast. So from one species to another, the shape of the chloroplast also can vary. It could be disc-like, plate-like, reticulate, cup-shaped, spiral, ribbon-shaped, so many different types. Okay, so the shape of the chloroplast will vary. Within the chloroplast, few members. Within the chloroplast, in few of these green algae, you can see structures called pyrenoids. This is an important point and this is a characteristic feature of green algae you have to remember. I am going to put 2 stars here so that in your notes you are reminded. Okay. Pyrenoids are found within the chloroplast only in some green algae. What are these pyrenoids? They store certain things. What do they store? They store proteins and they also store starch. There are some algae in which the reserve food is in the form of oil droplets. Over here, the cell wall, like most other plants, is made up of cellulose and pectin. Pectose is written in your textbooks, but you can write cellulose and pectin. Artistic alliance, great. It's correct. Floridian starch is the reserve food that we find in red algae. Jorox is saying Krebs cycle. Where is Krebs cycle coming here from? Please do not chat here in the comment section. It will distract everybody involved, including me. You can say hi, hello to your friends later. Okay, not on this chat box. Please maintain the sanctity of a classroom. If you wouldn't do this in an offline class, you should never be doing it even in an online class. Okay? Is there any doubt so far? If yes, let me know, or let's move on. Okay, Ujjwal says no. I assume that means he has no doubts. Let's move on. Great. Here are some examples given to you in NCERT. Chlamydomonas unicellular, cup-shaped chloroplast. Eulothrix pyrogyra, they are filamentous. Volvox, this is an NCERT diagram. This is colonial alga. Cara is also given in the diagram. Cara, if you look at it, it looks like a what do we say, advanced plant. Like I told you when I started off with algae that it is thyroid in nature. It does not have root, stem and leaves. It's not differentiated. But here you see root-like structure, stem-like structure, leaf-like structure. It appears like an advanced plant. In fact, Cara is believed to be the ancestor of Bryophytes. You know that from algae, Bryophytes evolved, right? So it is believed that Charophyte ancestors gave rise to Bryophytes. Okay, so here these are the examples that you will have to remember, which is why I have come up with a mnemonic. Take your books and pencils and write it down, or if you're going to read from the same notes, you can revise it right here. Because I want you to remember in clear detail, I've written everything in green color. Okay, so for chlorophyce, what is the mnemonic? The mnemonic or trick here is, this is the image that you will have to associate with chlorophyce. Whenever I say green algae, you should associate it with a green color, super clean, ultra clean Volvo car. Everybody knows Volvo cars, right? If you've read Twilight, you know that Edward in Twilight drives a Volvo car. So this is a green Volvo car that is shiny and very clean. This is the thing that you will have to remember for. This is the image that you will have to associate for green algae. So what is this mnemonic? Your ultra clean Volvo car calms my spirit. Your ultra clean Volvo car calms my spirit. What is your here? Over here, while giving the mnemonic, I have not focused on the letter. Generally, what you see on YouTube is for C there will be a letter and V there will be a letter. For U there will be a letter, but that's not what I've done. In my mnemonic, I've used the sound so that it will help you remember better. Okay, so you might say your is starting with Y, but Eudorina is starting with E. But what I'm trying to do here is match the sound. Your ultra clean Volvo car calms my spirit. Your is Eudorina, ultra Eulothrix, clean Chlamydomonas, Volvo Volvox, car Cara, calms Chlamydomonas, spirit Spirogyra. Some students get confused between Spirogyra and Spirulina. Spirogyra is a green algae about which we are studying here. Spirulina is a blue-green alga about which you've studied in biological classification. Okay, spiral here is Spirogyra. Is this clear? Have you written it down? I want you to associate this image with green algae so that you'll easily remember this. Why is remembering this important? You'll get to know because we're going to solve a couple of questions which you will be able to answer only if you know the examples. Okay, great. All right. Chlorella is right here. Okay, so how does reproduction take place in green algae? We've studied how generally reproduction takes place in algae, right? If it's vegetative, it's fragmentation. If it's asexual, it's by means of production of spores. If it is sexual, then it can either be isogamous, oogamous, or anisogamous. So it's the same thing even here, nothing extra. Is it clear? Is it clear so far? This is all about green algae that you'll have to remember. Now, without looking, I'm not even showing you that slide. Type in the comment section and tell me what is the mnemonic for green algae. Type in the comments and let me know right now what is the mnemonic for green algae. Harsh, is that what your name is? Har, Azhar. Just see, there are many layers to cracking Neet. First of all, you should understand the concept. Just because you've understood doesn't mean you remember. So you have to revise so that frequently, so that you can remember all the concepts. After that, you have to solve questions to test how well you've understood, how well you remember. After the test, you have to analyze your performance and see where you're going wrong, why are you going wrong. Fix those points, take more tests, then you will be able to crack Neet. Okay, so it's a long process. Your ultra green Volvo car calms my spirit. Great, great, great. Perfect. Everybody's understood it very well. All right, now let's move on and talk about the next type of algae, which is Pheophyceae. Here, the more scientific term is Pheophyceae. In layman's language and common language, we call it brown algae. Though we call it brown algae, sometimes its color is almost like olive green. It can vary from olive green to brown color depending upon how much of a particular pigment is present. Like I told you in the beginning, algae we classify based on what kind of pigments are present in it, right? So here, the pigments, remember I told you chlorophyll A is present in all plants. Even here, chlorophyll A will be present. But along with chlorophyll A, you also have chlorophyll C and certain other carotenoids and xanthophylls. The primary pigment, most important pigment which is responsible for providing a brown color to brown algae is called fucoxanthin. Fucoxanthin. Okay, so this is a type of xanthophil, xanthin. It is a type of xanthophil called fucoxanthin. This is what will provide brown color to the algae. Depending upon how much of this pigment is present, the color of the algae will vary. If this fucoxanthin is less, then it could be olive green. If the fucoxanthin content is more, then it will be more a brown shade. Okay, so that is the pigments first. Where do you find them? Green algae, I told you, they are found in aquatic as well as marine habitats. But brown algae and red algae, mostly they are found in marine habitats. Very rarely they are found in freshwater habitats. Okay, so brown algae, where do we find them? We find them primarily in marine habitats like oceans and seas. Wherever there's salt water, you can find them. I have no idea about who delivered what baby. Let's focus on the class, please. Yes, if you have focus, if you can give your time and effort and energy into studying, then it's possible. Okay? It does not depend on whether I say it's possible or not. You should understand what it takes. Are you willing to sacrifice all of those things? Are you willing to give it your 100, 200%? It depends on you. I can say it. But if I say it and you do not do the work, then will it be really possible just because I said it? No, right? So you should work really hard. It depends not on your guts, it depends on your commitment and how much disciplined you are. Can we score from 300 to 600? Yes, it's possible. I have had students who were scoring 200 odd marks and they've done really well because they got serious with their life. Okay, yes, you should all give your best, which is why we are also giving our best here. Okay, so let's move on. Yeah, so what is the reserve food here? It can be laminarin or mannitol. What does the cell wall have here? Cell wall, like all plant cell walls, obviously will have cellulose. But outside the cellulose, you will have a gelatinous coating of algin. What is algin? Remember when we spoke earlier in another slide? in the introduction of algae, I told you that brown algae will contain hydrocolloids called algin, right? It's the same algin that we are talking about right now. So outside the cellulosic cell wall, you will find algin. How does reproduction take place here? Nothing new. Reproduction, if it's vegetative, it could be by fragmentation. If it's asexual, it will produce zoospores. If it's sexual, it could be iso, aniso or oogamous. It's not like one species. Today, I feel like anisogamous reproduction. Today, it does anisogamous. Tomorrow, it does oogamous. It is species specific. There are some species who will exclusively reproduce by isogamous reproduction. There are some species who will exclusively reproduce by oogamous. So that way it is species specific. It's not like every organism has a choice on how to reproduce. Okay. One day, ideally you will have 2 classes in this particular series. Morning you'll have 1 class, evening you'll have 1 class, because but for some reasons today the physics class that was scheduled in the morning, for some reason it got cancelled for some technical issues, which is why this class which was scheduled in the evening is happening right now. You can get our schedule on the community post. Okay. Agar, you can find that in red algae. We right now talking about brown algae. After that, when we move on to red algae, you will understand that. Mupendra Singh, my name is Shalini. Okay, so is this clear so far? What are the important points from brown algae that you have to remember? What are the important points? Who is going to tell me in the comments? First most important thing, along with chlorophyll A, what do we have? We have chlorophyll C. Along with that, we'll have carotenoids and xanthophyll, which is the most important xanthophyll responsible for brown color. It is fucoxanthin. What is the pigment that you see here? What is the, I'm sorry, not the pigment. What is the reserve food material that you see here? It's either laminaria, laminarin or mannitol. Another important point, which is the hydrocolloid that you will see outside the cell wall? It is algin. Okay, so these are the important points that you should remember about brown algae. Yes, Shashank, laminarin is reserve food. Laminaria is the brown algae that is consumed as food. Yes, we'll get to that point immediately, Praveen. In the next slide, we'll discuss that. Yes, they're water holding substances. Perfect. So, over here in Pteridophytes, size and form is highly variable. Some of the brown algae are small, simple and branched, like your ectocarpus here. Ectocarpus. This is what the plant looks like, but when you look at it microscopically, you can see filament-like structures. This is a very simple structure, but you can also see kelps. This is a kelp. I told you in the beginning, right? Kelps are very tall plants, very huge, massive plant body it will have. So kelps are also seen. Sometimes they may reach almost 100 meters in height. Okay. What is kelps? Kelps are a type of brown algae. This is the correct spelling, K-E-L-P-S. They are brown algae that grow very, very tall. Yes, we will do that. I have planned it, Shashank. Going forward, we will discuss that as well. Now, in these brown algal plant bodies, you will find 3 distinct parts. You do not have true root, stem and leaves, but you do find root-like, leaf-like, stem-like structures. What is the function of the root? Function of the root is to attach to the substratum. Of course, it helps in absorption of water and minerals and all of that. But another important function of roots is anchorage. It anchors the plant to the soil. Very similarly, in these kelps or in these brown algae also, you have a structure called the holdfast. This holdfast is very similar functionally to our roots in higher plants. This holdfast will act like the root and help in attachment. Similar to the stem, we have structures called stipe. Holdfast is similar to root. So I'll write root like here. Stipe is stem like. Frond is leaf like. So in its body, you will have holdfast that helps in attachment, stem like stalk, which is called the stipe, and you will have the leaf like frond. You can see it everywhere. See, here you have the holdfast, you have the stipe, and then you have the area, major area where photosynthesis will take place, that is your frond. Understood? Is that clear, everyone? Now, here are a couple of examples from brown algae that you should remember. I've written it all in brown color. I'm not sure if you can clearly see it on a black background. Can you see it? Is it clear? Is it clear? Let me know. Substratum is whatever the plant is growing on. Whatever the plant is growing on, that is called the substratum. It is a little bit blurred. I'll write on top of it. Don't worry. Is this color better? I'll write on top of it. So for brown algae, wait, it's not very clear, I guess. Let me use a different shade of brown that is a little bit more brighter. Can you see this better? Okay. So, sir dictates extremely lame facts. Sir dictates extremely lame facts. You have to imagine one Professor Brown. Okay. So this Professor Brown wears brown color pants and brown color shirt and brown color cap. So this is Professor Brown. This sir dictates extremely lame facts. You keep that one image in your mind. You will be able to remember all the examples for brown color. Okay. So sir is for sargassum. Dictates is for Dictyota. Extremely ectocarpus. Lame laminaria. Facts fucus. Is it clear now? Can you see it clearly? What is the image that you should associate with brown algae? There is a professor who wears brown tie, brown shirt, brown belt, brown pants, brown shoes, brown hat. Okay, so if that image you have in your head, you can remember this very easily. Always try to associate things you study with images. That way your brain will remember better. Yes, a brown guy, basically. Is it clear right now? Also, one other important thing, you should also know the labels of all the diagrams you have in your NCERT textbook. This was not there in NCERT. I've picked it up from the internet. All these three are there in the NCERT. You can get questions where these parts are not labeled. They're just given ABC and you have to identify what is the correct label. So you should know all these labels and which are these exams. How to revise this? How to revise this? Study, close your book, recollect. Study, close your book, close your eyes, try to recollect. Write it down. Okay? There is one mistake that students commonly do while trying to revise. What they do is they keep the same notebook, textbook in front of them and reread it 100 times. Keep on reading 100 times. Just by reading it, you will feel like you know it all. As long as you have prompts in front of you, important points in front of you, you will seem like you know it all. But just try one thing, close your book and try to recollect. You will know where all you're forgetting. Everybody must have faced this, right? In schools also, whenever I used to teach in offline classes, students have literally told me. Sometimes you're teaching something and then suddenly you see somebody talking and you ask them to stand up and answer. Like, what was I teaching right now? What did I just say? Let me know. At that point, the student may not be able to answer it. But after I give out the answer, that student will never forget that question's answer ever in its life. Right? That is exactly what happens. Instead of rereading 100 times, if you recollect 10 times, that is far more useful in remembering. Okay? Neet aspirant, anyone from India? I think everyone is from India. Is it clear so far? Let's move on. Now we're talking about red algae. Technically, we call it Rhodophyceae. First things first, why is it red in color? What pigments do we have? Does it have? Like all algae, even red algae has chlorophyll A. But what does it have along with chlorophyll A? It has chlorophyll D. Along with that, what does it have? It has R-phycoerythrin. Why are we calling it R-phycoerythrin? Because phycoerythrin is found in blue-green algae also. There we call it C-phycoerythrin because that is cyanobacteria. Here it is red algae, so we call it R-phycoerythrin. Have you know that red blood cells are also called erythrocytes, right? Erythros itself means red. So phyco means algae. Phyco, algae, erythro, red. Then phycoerythrin is the pigment that is responsible for providing red color to algae. I wish I could. I really prefer teaching and writing simultaneously like you suggested, Ravi. But right now we are very short on time. Within limited time we have to revise and also solve questions. If I'm writing everything down, all of these statements down, you can imagine how long it will take. Also, while I'm writing, you're sitting quietly. There will be many pauses. You might get bored. Okay, right now I do not want any of you to get bored. I want you to be stuck to your seats and understand well. Okay, so that is why these last minute series will always be like this. Okay, so but still I've ensured that all the important points are covered in the PPT. You don't have to worry about that. Sujal is asking if it can show photosynthesis. Of course, chlorophyll A is absolutely important for photosynthesis. Do you remember in photosynthesis in higher plants, there's a chapter you learn about reaction center and there are antenna molecules, and in the reaction center always chlorophyll A will be there. So chlorophyll A is absolutely essential for photosynthesis. It's found in green algae, brown algae as well as red algae. Okay. I hope that clears your doubt. Okay. So here you have chlorophyll A. Obviously, you should have chlorophyll A. Along with that, you have chlorophyll D and you have phycoerythrin. Now, you might get a question asked like, algae are mostly aquatic. We discussed that in the first slide itself, general characters of algae. Mostly they are found on the surface because for algae to survive, they need food. They are capable of synthesizing food. To synthesize food, sunlight is very important. Light is very important. That is why you mostly see algae growing in the upper layers of water, very deep in the oceans. You will not find plants growing because very deep inside the ocean, sunlight will not penetrate, and without light, photosynthesis is not possible. But in deeper layers of water where no other kinds of plants are present, red algae can still be found. Why is it so? Red algae can be found even in the deeper layers of water where no other plants are found because of this pigment phycoerythrin. Phycoerythrin is a pigment that will produce, that will provide red color to the plant. But because, this pigment is capable of absorbing light in the blue-green region as well. In this blue-green region, the wavelength will be very low, but frequency or energy will be very high. If frequency or energy is high, obviously its penetrating capacity also will be high, right? So it penetrates in the deep layers. Blue-green light penetrates in the deep layers, but plants that don't have phycoerythrin will not have the ability to absorb it. That is why those plants can't grow there. These plants have phycoerythrin. Phycoerythrin can absorb sunlight of those wavelengths as well. So it is capable of surviving there. I don't know any Arav Chopra. Is this clear? So this you should remember. Whenever they're asking you about why is it that red algae can grow in deep layers or lower layers of water despite sunlight not reaching there, or many other plants cannot grow there, that is because phycoerythrin has the ability to absorb those wavelengths of light as well. Okay. Now, what is the reserve food here? The reserve food here is Floridian starch. This is very similar to amylopectin and glycogen in structure. Vegetative Over here in red algae, you should remember one thing very, very importantly. Reproduction here can happen by spores, by sexual reproduction, formation of gametes. In red algae, characteristic feature that you should remember in red algae is that there are no motile cells in its life at all. In its life cycle, there are no motile cells. Even the spores do not have flagella, even the gametes do not have flagella. So one thing characteristic that you should remember about red algae is that in red algae there are no motile cells at all. Vegetative reproduction can happen by fragmentation. Asexual reproduction happens with spores. But if you noticed in green algae and brown algae, we spoke about zoospores that are flagellated. But here in red algae, the spores are non-motile. Sexual reproduction also happens by means of formation and fusion of gametes. But over here, the gametes that are the gametes that are formed are non-motile. Even the male or the female gamete, neither of them will have flagella. They are not flagellated gametes. Okay. So red algae, what are the different things that you will have to remember regarding red algae? Firstly, what are the pigments? Why is it that it's able to penetrate, grow in deeper regions of the water? That is because it has phycoerythrin. What is the reserve food? Floridian starch. Important fact, no motile cells at all in the life cycle of red algae. So this is very, very important. All right. Yes, they are multicellular mostly. Ujjwal is saying phycoerythrin. Yes, there is also a characteristic feature of red algae. Is it clear so far? Any doubts? Yes. All right. These are some examples of red algae that you should remember. Porphyra, Polysiphonia, both of these are diagrams that you have in NCERT. Gracilaria, Gelidium. We already studied about these two. Can you tell me where we learned about Gracilaria and Gelidium? We obtain agar commercially from these two plants. They are used in obtaining agar. Okay. So now let's see the mnemonic for red algae. Is it clear? Is what is written here clear? It is written in red. The mnemonic is poly-prepared grass jelly. Poly is for Polysiphonia. Prepared is for Porphyra. Grass, Gracilaria. Jelly is for Gelidium. Note it down quickly in your books. Poly-prepared grass jelly. Is it clear? Okay. Now quickly in the comment section, I want all the three mnemonics for green algae, brown algae, red algae. Quickly write it down. Quickly write it down. What is it for green algae? What is the image that you have in your mind? What is it for brown algae? What is it for red algae? Write it down in the comment section right now. Your time starts now. Tick, tick, 1. Sujal, you're saying agar helps in isolation of hormone. I'm not really sure about that application of agar. I don't know which hormone it helps in isolation. I'm not sure. Sorry. I want full sentence. Green algae? Yes. Yes, correct, Praveen. What is it for brown algae? Correct, Aradhya. Correct, Sukhpreet. What is it for brown algae? It's something to do with sir. Yes. Brown dictates extremely lame facts. That is for brown algae. Red algae, poly-prepared grass jelly. Right? Okay. Okay, cool. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll just drink some water and come back. Meanwhile, don't start some drama in the comment section. What is this? Dihydrogen monooxygen. Hydration break, yeah. Okay. So here is your table in NCERT. That is very important. It kind of summarizes the entire 3 groups of algae. Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Let's get to the point. Let's get back to the class. Do 3 stretches, 3 jumping jacks in your place, wherever you're sitting at, and get back to the class. Get back to the moment. All right. So we have different classes of algae here: Chlorophyceae, Phaeophyceae, Rhodophyceae. We'll look at it one by one. What is the common name for Chlorophyceae? Green algae. Pheo is brown, Rhodo is red. Right. Pigments. Notice how A is present in all of them. In green algae, along with A, you have B. In brown algae, along with chlorophyll A, you have chlorophyll C. In red algae, along with chlorophyll A, you have chlorophyll D. Brown algae characteristic pigment fucoxanthin. Red algae characteristic pigment phycoerythrin. What is this? Reserve food, stored food. In green algae, it's starch. In brown algae, mannitol or laminarin. In red algae, it's Floridian starch. Cell wall made up of cellulose and pectin normally. In brown algae, you find algin. In red algae, you have cellulose, pectin and polysulfate esters is given. Polysulfate esters are basically ester derivatives that you get from polysaccharides, okay, from carbohydrates. So this is basically your agar and carrageenan only, okay. So it's that. Number of flagella and position, where exactly is it? In Chlorophyceae, you can find 2 to 8 flagella and they are apical in position. Apex means towards the tip. In Phaeophyceae, they are usually pyriform, pear-shaped like that, and it is lateral. One is long, one is short. It is unequal. In red algae, is there any flagella at all? There is no flagella because in the life cycle of red algae, there are no motile cells at all. Actually, what Darwin and his son did was, Sujal, they took the agar and they kept it, they cut the coleoptile, they kept the agar and they kept the tip of the coleoptile on top. Basically, the oxygen that was present at the tip moved to the agar. So, they did not use it for isolation, they just wanted to check what is it that is causing the bending of light. When we get to that chapter, I'll explain that, okay? So yeah, habitat, like I already said, mostly in saltwater, brackish water, you find brown and red algae. Very rarely you find them in fresh water. But green algae is found in fresh water, salt water, everywhere. Ujjwal, actually it's very nice when I see that students try to connect something else that they've studied in some other chapter. See, right now we were talking about agar. So basically I was telling how agar is used in creating ice creams and jellies and tarts and all of that. But who was that? Sujal remembered that during auxins, discovery of auxins, agar was used, and then he brought that into this chapter, which is great, right? So you're trying to correlate what you've studied somewhere else with what you're studying here. Not everybody can make that connection. So that's where Darwin came to the plant kingdom. Yes, in biotechnology also you used, in microbiology we make these nutrient media to grow bacteria, fungi and all. There we use agar. So you take this nutrient medium solution, you put like little bit of agar, it is available as powder, you mix it and you heat it, it will dissolve. You pour it inside your plate, leave it there for some time, it will become solidified, jelly like. It is used in biotech also. What for? For gel electrophoresis. Yes, right. Brilliant. Okay, so is this clear? Are we done with algae? Hey, why is it used in astrology? I don't know. You should tell me, Sumit. Astronauts. Astrology is all your, what do you say? They check your stars, alignment, Saturn, Shani and all that. That is astrology, no? Okay. So we have finished algae, discussion of algae. Are you ready for some questions? Read the questions carefully. Attempt every question as if it is a question in your final NEET exam with focus, with clarity. You have to read each question. Don't simply answer just because you have to answer it fast. Okay? Just now we've discussed algae. We've even summarized it with this table. Please use your complete brain, completely focused and answer the question. Okay? So I'm going to start the poll. Motile asexual spores produced in algal members are called. What are they called? Zoospores, aplanospores, conidia or cyst? What do you think is the correct answer? All of you are saying A. Let's check. Very simple question. All of you have answered A. Vimal has answered in under 11, in about 11 seconds. Then we have Priyanshi, then we have Akash. It's good to see how, see, there's one boy, one girl alternating. That means competition is equal. Girls are also as good as the boys. Okay. So Suresh, Ayush, Praju, Gautami, all of you have answered this correctly. Great going. Next question is here. It has examples. Now let's see how many of you will answer this correctly. This is where the actual problem starts. Which of the following is a colonial and motile alga? Colonial alga is which one? Cara, Porphyra, Chlamydomonas, Volvox. It has to be colonial and it also has to be motile. It should have flagella, which is the correct answer. Many of you are answering as C. Sujal, if you say 3 and 4, it will not pick it up. You should say A, B, C, D. Whatever options are displayed there, you should use the same. Otherwise, it will not appear in the unity thing here, in the poll here. Okay, so the correct answer to this question, as majority of you saying, are C. Brilliant. Very nice to see that 24 students have answered correctly. Vedam and Ragul, Vimal Raj, all of you have answered correctly. Let's take a quick look at the leaderboard. Vimal Raj is on top of the list. He's correctly answered 6 questions out of 7 and his average time is less than 10 seconds per question. Then we have Akash, then we have Priyanshi, then we have Santosh, Arpita, Suresh, Sukh. If you see the top 10 people, there are very few girls and more boys. I want all girls in the top 3. Okay? So, brace yourselves and answer the questions correctly. The correct answer to this question is option C. Now let's take a look at the next question. Which of the following is a filamentous alga? Is Pyrogyra filamentis, Dictyota, Chlamydomonas laminaria? Which is filamentous? Answer carefully. What does filamentous mean? Filamentous means it's multicellular. Cells are arranged end to end like a long filament. That is filamentous. So the correct answer here, like most of you all are answering, is option A. Some of you got confused and answered C, right? Some of you all got confused and answered it as C. Over here, Chlamydomonas is not filamentous, it is unicellular. Spirogyra is filamentous. Which other alga is filamentous along with Spirogyra? Can you give me the example of another filamentous green alga? Who can give me the example? Who can give me the example of another filamentous green alga? Yes, Akash. It is Ulothrix. Okay? Both of these are filamentous alga. Cara is not filamentous. Cara, I told you, no, which is Cara? Cara is that plant that looks like advanced plant. It has stem-like, root-like, leaf-like structures. That is Cara. Okay? Now let's move on. Here is our next question. Which of the following groups motile gametes are absent? In which motile gametes are absent? Green algae, mosses, brown algae, red algae. What are mosses? Mosses are a type of bryophytes about which we have not discovered so far. We will discuss them going forward. Right now we are only solving questions related to algae. Roger is saying brown algae. What did I say? In which group of algae there are no motile cells at all? In which color did I write it? It is in red algae, right? So the correct answer to this question is option D. Most of you have answered it correctly. For this question, Sukhpreet has answered it the quickest, okay, in less than 7 seconds. Then we have Aradhya and Praveen Nagabattula. So the correct answer here is option D. Here is the next question. Very simple, direct question. Floridian starch is the stored food material in. You do not have red algae, brown algae, green algae here. If you know the examples, only then you can answer this question. Is Cara red alga? No. Cara is green alga. Is Porphyra red alga? Yes. Is Ectocarpus red alga? No. It is brown alga. Is Cedrus a red alga? No. It is a gymnosperm. In red algae, you have stored food in the form of Floridian starch. So the correct answer to this question is option B. How many of you could answer this? Only 33%. See, this is what happens. If we directly ask it's brown algae, green algae, everybody will remember. But when it comes to examples, you tend to forget. We just now discussed mnemonics also so that you will remember easily. But still, many of you made mistakes here. Right? So, to this question, the correct answer is option B. Let's move on and take a look at our next question. Red algae reach the maximum depth in seawater where no other type of photosynthetic organisms grow. This is due to the abundant formation of which pigment? Chlorophyll A, phycocyanin, phycoerythrin, chlorophyll D. Chlorophyll A is found in all plants. If it was because of chlorophyll A, then all plants should have grown, right, in the depth of sea. But that is not the case. What is phycocyanin? Phycocyanin is a pigment that you find in cyanobacteria or blue-green algae. Phycoerythrin is what we find in red algae. Chlorophyll D is found in red algae, but that's not the reason. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option C. Let's see how many of you have answered this correctly. About 83% of you all have answered it correctly. Shivakumar, Praveen, Preeti, Aradhya, Vaidam, Viking Ayush, Sujal, all of you have answered correctly. Rahul, Vimal. Okay. Now let's move on to the next question. This is a statement-based question which also has examples. So read carefully before answering. Read very carefully before answering. Which of the given statements is wrong? Which is wrong? This is based on applications of or uses of algae. Does it increase the level of dissolved oxygen in the immediate environment? Yes, it does. Algin is obtained from red algae and carrageenan from brown algae. Is it true? No, this is ulta fight. Red algae, carrageenan, algin, brown algae. So this is incorrect. Agar-agar is obtained from Gelidium and Gracilaria. Yes, correct. Laminaria and Sargassum is used as food. Yes, correct. We were required to find out which of the given statements is wrong. So the wrong statement here is option B. So the correct answer for this question is option B. 79% of you all have answered correctly. What was the confusion? Which other option did you get confused with? Let me see. Some of you are confused with C. Right, I think one or two of you have answered it as C. Yeah, this is what happens when you don't remember the examples properly. If you are in a tense state of mind, the moment you read the statement, it will seem like, yeah, it's true, correct. But if you're not focused, then you might mark it as the correct, it might seem like the correct option to you. So you should have undivided attention, complete clarity while reading the question so that you do not get any negative marking. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Just some guy. What is your name? Just some guy. Why should I give you a samosa party? You get good marks, get a seat in a government college, and you give me a party. Here is another statement-based question. I've put similar kind of questions because I want you to practice all of this a lot. When you're listening to the lecture or reading the textbook, it will seem like you've understood it all. But the problem comes while you try to solve the question. Then you will forget. Examples. Majority of you are answering this as A. Which of the following statements is wrong? Mannitol is the stored food in Rhodophyceae. Algae and carrageenan are products of algae. Agar-agar is obtained from Gelidium and Gracilaria. Chlorella is used as space food. Okay, right. All of you are saying A is the incorrect statement. A is the incorrect statement, yeah. Why do you think it's wrong? If mannitol is not the stored food in Rhodophyceae, mannitol is the stored food in which group of algae? Tell me in the comments. Mannitol is the stored food in which group of algae? Right, in Pteridophytes. In Rhodophyceae, which is the stored food? In Rhodophyceae, which is the stored food? Let me know in the comments. In Rhodophyceae, is it starch? Is it laminarin? Is it mannitol? What is it? In Rhodophyceae, I want the full name. It is Floridian starch, correct. So, every time you answer such questions, wherever you find the incorrect statement, try to make it correct. That way you're getting another revision. Okay. So, mannitol is not the stored food in Rhodophyceae. It is the stored food in Pteridophytes. In Rhodophyceae, it is Floridian starch. Here is another question, example based. Male gametes are flagellated in. Male gametes are flagellated in Spirogyra, in Polysiphonia, in Ectocarpus, in Porphyra. Think carefully, think carefully, think carefully. Nope. You don't remember your examples very well. Okay, I will not answer this question. I will show you a slide before I answer this question. Okay. Look at this. It actually sounds like that song, no? Actually, look at this. Is it flagellated? Is Spirogyra flagellated? Just because you saw Porphyra and Polysiphonia are both red algae. You thought, okay, it's not B and C, let's say A. But you forgot that in Spirogyra, it is non-flagellated gametes. Right? So now, will you change your answer? What is the correct answer? Male gametes are flagellated where? It is in option D. See, only one person. Vedam has answered it correctly. Now, after showing all these slides and giving you hints you're answering, in Neet you do not have second chances. One time you've circled the OMR, you've bubbled the OMR, it's over for you. You don't get such second chances, right? It's either +4 or -1. So, you should be more careful with your examples. How many of you answer this question without doubt with 100% confidence? That is what happens. It will seem like you know it all. But when you look at the question, it will seem like you have remembered it all. Only when you answer, you'll know. Which one of the following shows isogamy with non-flagellated gametes? If any of you answer this question wrong, I don't know what I'll do with you. I just showed you. Isogamous with non-flagellated gametes. It is option D, Spirogyra. Okay, still there are some people who answered this incorrectly. 18 students have answered correctly, about 95% of you all. So the correct answer to this question is Spirogyra, right? What is Eulothrix then? Does it produce flagellated or non-flagellated gametes? Is it isogamous or anisogamous? What is Eulothrix an example for? Who can tell me in the comments? Eulothrix is an example for. Eulothrix is an example for. Isogamous, flagellated. Right? Right. Here is another question, same concept. Sexual reproduction is oogamous in Spirogyra Eulothrix, Polysiphonia, Spirogyra, Eulothrix cara, Volvox and Fucus. It has to be oogamous, which is the correct answer. There's confusion between options A and B. Spirogyra Eulothrix, I just told you it's not oogamous, it is isogamous. The correct answer to this question is option A, Volvox and Fucus. Around 83% of you all have answered this correctly. The examples that are given here are the exact same examples that you have in your NCERT textbook. Right? Look here. What are the examples we have for, wow, where did I lose it? Yeah, what are the examples we have for oogamous, Volvox and Fucus? What is given in the options in our question here? It is Volvox and Fucus, right? So you should remember. As a homework, I'm telling you today, you were supposed to have 2 classes, but you have only 1 class. Make a list of all the examples from this chapter in one place so that you can revise frequently. Okay? So the correct answer here is option A. Here is another example based question. The thallus organization of Volvox is. How is the thallus? That means how is the plant body? Is it unicellular, multicellular, colonial, filamentous? What is it like? Does it have flagella or not? Is it motile, not motile? There's confusion between the options A and D. Some of you are answering it as A, some of you are answering it as D, some as B. Is it unicellular? It's not unicellular. You can eliminate this option. Does it have flagella or not? It does, right? I told you each individual cell is like a chlamydomonas which has 2 flagella. So it is not non-flagellate. We can eliminate this option. What are we left with? Multicellular and cocoid, colonial and motile. It is colonial and motile. Cocoid is something that we use when we refer to bacteria, right? Coccus, Vibrio and all of that. With respect to algae, you do not use such terms. So among the given options here, the most relevant one is option D. So the correct answer here is option D. Many students have got confused here because of this one word, right? I think now you have clarity. Rohan Singh, I'm not very fluent in Hindi. This is a pure English channel, no? So I'm sticking to English, and many of our students here are South Indians who do not understand Hindi very well. But I'm speaking in very simple English, which I think everybody can understand. So Rohan, you also can understand. Just pay attention. Okay? Yes, Praveen, I'm from Karnataka. Here is our next question. Algae with Floridian starch as reserve food material is also characterized by presence of chlorophyll B, fucoxanthin, non-sulfated esters, non-flagellate nature. Majority of you are answering it as D. Ujjwal is answered as C. Sukhpreet as A. What do you think is the correct answer? Majority is D. Few C and A's we can see. First of all, tell me, if Floridian starch is the reserve food, which group of algae is it? Is it red, green or brown? Floridian starch is the reserve food in which group of algae? It is in red algae. In red algae, you sure have chlorophyll A. Along with that, what do you have? Do you have chlorophyll B? No, you don't have chlorophyll B. Chlorophyll B you find in green algae. Do you have fucoxanthin? No, you don't have fucoxanthin. Fucoxanthin you find in brown algae. Do you have non-sulfated esters? No, you have polysulfated esters. This is also incorrect. Do you have non-flagellate nature? Yes. Here there are no motile cells at all. So the correct answer to this question is option D. 75% of you all have answered correctly. Rahul, Santosh, Akash are on the top 3. Is it clear? I think some of you have gotten confused with this because we saw in red algae polysulfate was there. You saw the sulfate word and got confused, right? So you have to be very, very careful. Now let's take a look at the next question. This is an interesting question. 30 seconds might not suffice, but let's see. Some characters of algae are given below. There's Floridian starch, agar, algin, mannitol, fucoxanthin, phycoerythrin, 2 anterior flagella. How many of this set of characters belong to laminaria? I don't know if you can see the question correctly here. Yeah, how many of these belongs to laminaria is the question. You should first remember if laminaria is a brown alga or a green alga. You should remember that first. Is laminaria brown algae? What is the correct answer? Let's see. Laminaria is brown algae. In brown algae, do you have Floridian starch? No. Oops, what have I done? Do you get agar from brown algae? No, that's from red algae. Both of these are from red algae. Algin, yes. Mannitol, yes. Fucoxanthin, yes. Phycoerythrin, no, it's found in red algae. 2 anterior flagella, yes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 are correct. And most of you have answered it as A. So the correct answer to this question is option A. Oh, majority of you, Allah, 100% of you have answered this question correctly. Great going. If you can answer a question like this correctly, then I'm very, very proud of you. Here is another question. Go through the following matches and you have to find out which of them are correct. Chlorella is a rich source of protein. Is it? Yes, it is. Gelidium has polysulfate esters in its cell wall. Does it? Yes, it does. Cara is a unicellular green alga. Is it a unicellular green alga? How do you remember Cara? I told you Cara is the ancestor of Bryophytes. It is an advanced group of green algae. So there you have, it appears like an advanced plant. So it's definitely not unicellular. So this is not correct. Is Polysiphonia example for a red alga? Yes, it is. So which are the correct matches? A and B and D. We don't even have that option. Wow. What do we do now? Let's assume this option is A, B and D. A, B and D. So D is the correct answer. Any more confusions in this question? Like 36% of you all have answered correctly. Any confusion in this question except for the fact that the options were not correct? Yeah, we could go for option B. But that's not entirely correct either. Right? Okay, let's move on. And we're done with algae. Let's take a look at our leaderboard. Akash, Santosh, Gautami, top 3 spots out of the 17 questions that have been displayed so far. He's attempted 17 and out of all the questions displayed so far, he's attempted 17 and he's gotten 15 correctly. Congratulations, Akash. I did not see you participate a lot, but great going. Then we have Santosh, who is second, and Gautami, third place. There's one girl in the top 3. It's impressive how Akash's average time of answering is just under 10 seconds. Then we have Rahul, Praveen, Vimal, Arpita, Priyanshi, Sabrina, Suresh, Venkat Pushpaharika, Vedam, Sukh, Tuhin, all of you, Ayush, all of you have been attempting and participating in the polls. Great going, guys. We still have a lot of questions to answer. At the end, we'll see who is on top of the list. Okay. Priya, thank you very much. I hope you get well soon. So now let's start with Bryophytes. So algae is done and dusted. It's 2:30 right now. Let's start with Bryophytes. What are the different groups of plants included in Bryophytes? In Bryophytes, we have mosses and we have liverworts. Among these two, liverworts are considered to be relatively primitive and mosses are considered to be relatively advanced. Where can you find bryophytes? Bryophytes are found in moist and shaded areas. Similar to algae, even when they are on land, the area where they are found has to be very, very moist. They are called amphibians of the plant kingdom. What does that mean? What do amphibians do? Amphibians of the plant kingdom, we call them amphibians of the plant, what do amphibians basically do? For example, frogs, they can live on land, but they need water for fertilization. You know, in frogs, external fertilization takes place, right? You've learned about it in your animal kingdom chapter. So the sperms are released out into the water medium, egg is also released in the water medium, fertilization happens outside the body of the female, external fertilization takes place. So in order for fertilization to happen, for reproduction to happen and continue generations, they will have to find a place that has water so that they can reproduce. Very similarly, even in bryophytes, though they survive on land, though they are land plants, they are terrestrial plants, they require water for fertilization, because over here, the male gametes have flagella. The male gametes are released out into the external environment, and those flagellated male gametes will swim in the film of water and go and find the female gamete and fertilize it. Okay, so because here water is required for fertilization, very similar to amphibians, we call it amphibians of the plant kingdom. Most people think amphibians can live on water and land. That's why even this can live inside water and on land, but that's not why we call it amphibians of the plant kingdom. It's also because they require water for fertilization, right? Yes, all plants have sporophytic and gametophytic phases. We'll talk about it going forward. Safina, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. I hope you're doing good too. Even in bryophytes, the plant body has not developed that much. It is still thalloid in nature. That means you do not have true root stems and leaves. You do not have vascular bundles. Xylem and phloem is not found here. Okay. So that is why we call it thalloid. You do not have differentiated root, stem and leaves. Right. So the plant body can be prostrate or erect. Prostrate means it's growing horizontally parallel to the surface of the soil or the ground. Erect means it's perpendicular to the surface of the ground. Okay. So some forms are prostrate, some of them are erect. Like I already mentioned, they lack true root, stem and leaves. But instead, they have root-like, leaf-like and stem-like structures. Main plant body is a haploid gametophyte. Over here, it's important for us to understand alternation of generation. Right now, it is a little complicated. Most people do not understand this easily. So I want you to pay your 100% undivided full attention over here. Let's discuss about the phases in the life cycle of a plant. Is everybody with me on this? Your focus should not go here and there. You must listen completely so that you can understand this concept well. Alright. Now, we have different groups of plants, right? You have algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, angiosperms. All of them are plants. And in all plants, you have something called alternation of generation. In this alternation of generation, there are two phases. I want complete attention, no spamming. Don't look at the comment section. Just listen to what I'm trying to say. Okay, for the next probably 10 minutes. So, all of these plants from algae to angiosperms, in their life, there will be two phases. Each phase will alternate with another phase. Okay, that is called alternation of generation. Now, what are these two phases? One phase is the gametophyte phase. It is the gametophytic phase. The other phase is the sporophytic phase. Why is it called a gametophytic phase? It is this phase which will produce gametes. Why is the other phase called a sporophytic phase? It is this phase that will produce spores. Gametophyte does not form from gametes. Gametophyte produces gametes. Sporophyte produces spores. Now let's talk about the ploidy of the gametophytic and the sporophytic generation. The gametophytic phase, all of the cells in the gametophytic phase or the gametophytic generation are haploid. All of the cells in the sporophytic generation are diploid. Gametes are always haploid. Okay. If gametophytic phase, the cells are haploid and it is going to produce haploid gametes, what kind of cell division will happen here? Tell me. Cells, mother cell is haploid, daughter cell is also haploid. If the ploidy is not reduced, if the ploidy is retained as it was in the parent cell, same as there in the daughter cells, it is mitosis. In the gametophytic phase, mitotic cell division will take place and the gametes will form. Sporophytes are diploid. Diploid sporophyte will give rise to spores and these spores further become the gametophyte. We know gametophyte is haploid. If the gametophyte is forming from the spore also has to be haploid, right? Gametophyte is forming from the spore has to be haploid. What is producing the spore? The sporophytic phase is producing the spore. In the sporophytic phase, you have diploid cells, but it is producing a structure that is haploid. Over here, there is reduction in ploidy. What was diploid is producing something haploid. What kind of cell division will take place here? What kind of cell division will take place here? Yes, all of you are right. Over here, meiotic cell division will take place. Okay. Now, the gametes, there will be a male gamete and there will be a female gamete. They both fuse to become the diploid zygote. The zygote will develop into the sporophyte. This is alternation of generation. Anas, I don't think you should make short notes because this notes itself will be available for you after the lecture. Right now, just pay attention and listen. If you have any doubts in the concepts that we are dealing with, you can ask your doubts in the comment section. Because simultaneously, if you're listening and taking down notes, it will divert your energy. Where if we had much time and I am also writing on the board, you will have enough time to copy it. But right now, that is not the case. We have very few days for the exam, right? So, you just pay attention to what I'm saying. You will get the same notes in the description as a PDF link 2 or 3 hours after the session is over. Artistic Alliance, we are going to get into the details of what is haplontic, diplontic going forward. Right now, I'm giving you an overview of what alternation of generation is like. Over here, regardless of whether it is algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms or angiosperms, what is constant is all the time, in all of them, alternation of generation will take place from sporophyte to gametophyte, from gametophyte to sporophyte. One thing. Secondly, gametophyte is always haploid. Sporophyte is always diploid. Gametophyte always produces gametes. Sporophyte always produces spores. When the gametophyte is producing gametes, mitotic cell division will happen. When the sporophyte is producing spores, meiotic division will happen. Is there any doubt in this so far? Today's second session is not there. It was supposed to be my session in the morning. I think math or not math, probably physics or chemistry was supposed to be there, but that got cancelled, which is why I'm doing it now. Bryophytes are called amphibians of the plant kingdom. Okay. Alright. So if this is clear, what differs from one plant group to another is whether the sporophyte is the dominant phase or the gametophyte is the dominant phase. Is the sporophyte multicellular? Is the gametophyte multicellular? Is the sporophyte dependent on the gametophyte? Is the gametophyte dependent on the sporophyte? So these are things that will differ. As we go on from one group to another, I will explain to you all of these details. Okay. Right now we are focusing on bryophytes. So let us see how it is in bryophytes. In bryophytes, whichever plant you see, I'm sure you've seen Mercantia when you go out on your vacations and trips. You will definitely find bryophytes, very tiny plants, very beautiful plants. So bryophytes, whatever plant you see, that is actually the gametophyte. That means every cell in that plant has one set of chromosomes only. So in bryophytes, the dominant phase is gametophyte. If it is gametophyte, it's obvious that it is haploid. Okay. So the main plant body in bryophytes is gametophytic. This gametophyte looks like this. This is an example of Mercantia. Mercantia is a liverwort. Okay. On the gametophyte, sex organs will be present. Sex organs are, remember, multicellular and jacketed. That is an advancement from algae. Algae are not multicellular sex organs. They are not jacketed. Over here, they are multicellular and jacketed. On the plant that we see, on the gametophytic main plant body that we see, we can find male sex organ, which is called the antheridium, and the female sex organ, which is called the archegonium. This antheridium will be club shaped, and within this antheridium, biflagellated antherozoites will be produced. Female sex organ is archegonium. It will be flask shaped. In this flask shape at the bottom, this swollen region is called the venter. Inside that you can find a single egg. Similar to how in humans many sperms are produced and only one egg per cycle is produced. Over here also many antherozoids are produced in the antheridium and only one single egg cell is produced per archegonium in the venter. Okay, so it is flask shaped, it produces a single egg. I already told you for fertilization water is required here. So what happens once this antheridium dehisces and releases all of the antherozoids, they will swim in a thin film of water and go reach the egg of the archegonium. So they will move inside the archegonium, neck of the archegonium, it will move inside and fuse with the egg, and then it will produce the zygote. Now what will happen to the zygote? Zygote will develop into the sporophyte. Zygote will develop into the sporophyte. We'll get to the gemma cup and all of that. For now, remember, zygote will develop into the sporophytic phase. This sporophyte does not have independent existence. Sporophyte cannot live separately from the gametophyte. In this archegonium, you have egg. After fertilization, this itself will become the zygote. So over here itself, within the archegonium itself, the sporophyte will develop. So the sporophyte is present on the gametophytic plant. Sporophyte depends on the gametophytic plant body. Okay, so the sporophyte here does not have independent existence. It is attached to the photosynthetic gametophyte. Sometimes it is not even capable of photosynthesis, so it obtains shelter and food from the gametophyte. Now within the sporophyte, there will be some cells. There will be some cells in the sporophyte that will undergo meiotic division and produce spores. When the spores are released, the spores will go and find a suitable substratum, fall on it and germinate. When the spore germinates, it will give the gametophyte again. Is it clear so far? Is it clear so far? Sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. It is completely dependent. It does not have independent existence. Wherever the archegonium is present, in the archegonium zygote is formed. That zygote within the archegonium itself will develop into the sporophyte. So the sporophyte is literally sitting on the gametophytic plant. Is it clear so far? It is according to the Neet syllabus itself. Okay? So that is what happens here. The main plant body is gametophytic. Sporophyte forms on the gametophyte itself. Sporophyte depends on the gametophyte itself. Sporophyte, some of the cells undergo meiosis to produce the spores, and these spores will germinate to form the gametophyte. Okay, so this type of life cycle is called a haplodiplontic life cycle. Over here, both sporophytic and gametophytic phases are multicellular. Multicellular sporophyte as well as gametophyte. Okay, now let's move on quickly and talk about the uses of bryophytes. Water is needed in life cycle for fertilization. Okay, now let's move on. Uses of bryophytes. What are some uses of bryophytes? They provide food for many herbaceous mammals, birds and other animals. There is a species of bryophytes called sphagnum. Whenever you hear sphagnum, you should associate it with another word called peat. You know, peat is like partially decomposed plant matter. It can be used as fuel. Okay. So sphagnum is used as peat. Earlier, very many years ago, when some living material had to be shipped from one part of the world to another part, you needed some water holding substances. Then they used to make use of sphagnum because it has a high water holding capacity. Okay, so yeah, it was also used as a packing material. You know how forests form. Forests were not always forests. First there was bare area, and then eventually over a course of thousands of years a forest forms. So when you have a bare area where you just have rocks, if forest has to form, first some plants have to colonize that area and make the soil so fertile that other plants can come and grow there. So the first plants that grow in a bare area or colonize rocks are your mosses. Mosses along with the lichens are the first organisms to colonize rocks. Okay. Also in the forest you may have seen how they form a very thick mat on the floor. By doing so, it prevents soil erosion. How do we classify bryophytes? There are two major groups. One is liverworts, like I already mentioned earlier. Liverworts is the relatively primitive type of bryophyte, and then we have mosses. Okay, now let's learn individually about liverworts and mosses. Okay, so first, this is what a liverwort looks like. It is thalloid, as you can clearly see. It is dorsiventral, flat. What is sphagnum? Sphagnum is a species of bryophyte. Yes, it was given in ecology. Earlier, you had one chapter in ecology ecosystem chapter. You had xerarch succession and hydrarch succession. In xerarch succession, you used to learn about this, but right now in the rationalized syllabus and in your Neet syllabus, that is deleted. Okay. Yeah. So the plant body of a liverwort is obviously thyroid because it is also a bryophyte. It is dorsiventral, that means it's flat and it's closely pressed to the substrate. Remember this. Remember this very well. Markantia is an example for a dioecious liverwort. You have separate male and separate female plant. Basically, it is a unisexual plant. This has the archegoniophore. So this is the female plant. And here you have the antheridiophore. This is the male plant. This is basically the flat Markantia liverwort. Okay. So this is 4 means stalk. Archegoniophore is a stalk. At the tip of this you can find many archegonia. Antheridiophore is a stalk. At the tip of that you can find many antheridia. You have a separate male plant, separate female plant. That's what's called dioecious. Remember, this is an example, very important example that you have to remember. Okay. Now let's move on. How does asexual reproduction occur in liverworts? Dioecious means you have two separate plants. Di means two. You have two separate plants, one male, one female. Okay. Is it clear? No, you have many dioecious. It's not the only exception. Asexual reproduction can happen by fragmentation. About fragmentation we already know, right? If this is one thallus, if this is the thallus, by some reason it gets fragmented, each one will develop into a new individual plant. That is fragmentation. Now what is gemma? Over here you saw there was a label called gemma cup, right? So gemma cups are the small multicellular receptacles that you have. They are multicellular, green and disc-like structures. They will act like asexual buds. When they are dispersed, each gemma can give rise to a new plant. Okay, so that is another way by which asexual reproduction can take place. How does sexual reproduction take place? We saw that male and female sex organs are produced either on the same plant or on different plants. Same plant, example funaria, two different plants we just saw as Markantia, right? So they can be produced either on the same or on different thalli. How is the sporophyte? The sporophyte will form here basically. Wherever there is archegonia, the sporophyte will form here in the archegonia. So this sporophyte will typically have 3 parts, and the 3 parts are foot, the seta and the capsule. Foot is where it is within the archegonium. Seta is a long stalk. At the tip you will have a capsule. Within the capsule the cells will undergo meiosis to give rise to spores. Okay, and when these spores germinate, what do we get? We get gametophytes. So that is how the life cycle of liverworts is. Now let's take a look at mosses. What are mosses? Mosses are relatively advanced type of bryophytes. So in mosses, like all bryophytes, the dominant phase is you can ask your doubts. The dominant phase is gametophytic. So obviously, since this is a bryophyte, here the gametophyte will be the dominant phase. It will have 2 stages typically. Remember this very well. The first one is the protonema stage and the second one is the leafy stage. So you have a spore, right? The spore germinates to give rise to a filamentous prostrate structure. This is called protonema. Okay, so from the spore directly you will not get a plant. You will first get a filamentous structure, that is the protonema. It develops directly from the spore. It is a creeping green branched and frequently filamentous stage. From this protonema, from these branches, from the secondary protonema, the leafy stage will arise as a small lateral bud. From the lateral bud, the leafy stage will arise. In the leafy stage, that is what the funaria and all of these mosses that we see, in the leafy stage, you can see there will be an axis, and on this axis leaves will be arranged spirally. Leaf-like structures will be arranged spirally. To attach to the soil or the substratum, they will have rhizoids. That is your second stage, which is the leafy stage. Remember this about bryophytes. How does vegetative reproduction take place? Again, over here, vegetative reproduction can happen by fragmentation. It can also occur by budding in the secondary protonema. Sexual reproduction is very similar again. Sexual reproduction, sex organs will be produced. Which are the sex organs? Male sex organ is antheridia and the female sex organ is your archegonia, right? They are produced. Wherever the leafy stage is there, at the tip of the leafy branches, at the apex of the leafy shoots, these sex organs will be found. Antheridia will release antherozoites. They will fuse with the egg cell and form the zygote. What will the zygote do? Zygote will develop into a sporophyte, and this sporophyte also will have the same 3 parts: foot, seta and capsule. But the sporophyte in mosses is slightly more elaborate, more developed than liverworts. Sometimes it will have even mechanisms to disperse the spores. Okay. So, some of the common examples for mosses are Funaria, Polytrichum and Sphagnum. Most people get confused Polytrichum, Polysiphonia. Polysiphonia is red algae, Polytrichum is a bryophyte. Okay, so this you should be careful. Filamentous, green, yes, correct Abhishek. Okay, so these are important points for mosses. In your textbook, you've been given these diagrams. This is diagram of Funaria and this is the diagram of Sphagnum. Sphagnum is also called peat moss. You can see how Funaria this is a monoecious moss. This also is monoecious. You can see how within the same plant, in one branch antheridia are produced, in the other branch there is archegonia produced, right? So these are monoecious plants. Is it clear so far? Is that clear so far? Now we have to start answering questions from bryophytes. Is everybody ready? What are the important points that you should remember? Which is the dominant phase in bryophytes? Which is the dominant phase in bryophytes? Let me know in the comment section. Dominant phase is gametophytic. Which are the 2 groups of bryophytes? Liverworts and mosses. Liverworts are relatively Primitive, mosses are more advanced. Liverworts are thyloid, dorsiventral, flattened. Mosses, they have two phases after the spore has germinated. In the gametophytic phase, you have a protonema stage and a leafy stage. Example for monoecious bryophyte, Funaria sphagnum. Example for a dioecious bryophyte, Markantia. They are called amphibians of the plant kingdom because they require water for fertilization. What kind of life cycle do we see here? Haplodiplontic life cycle, where haploid gametophytic phase, diploid sporophytic phase, both of them are multicellular. Which of them has independent existence? Gametophytes don't depend on sporophytes, but sporophytes cannot live without gametophytes. Sporophytes live on top of gametophytes. They're dependent on it for nutrition as well. These are some of the points that you should remember regarding bryophytes. Right, they are the first terrestrial plants. They're still very, very short. They do not grow to very tall heights because they lack the xylem and phloem. They don't have vascular tissues, which is why it is difficult. If it grows taller, water has to be transported against gravity. For that, you need vascular tissues, which these don't have. So they're very tiny, cute little plants. Okay. I hope it is clear. Now let's start solving the questions related to bryophytes. Here's our first question. Which one is wrongly matched? I have added some questions. I've added some questions that are only bryophyte related, some questions which have a combination of bryophyte and algae since we've done both. So let's see how many of you will answer it correctly. Which one is wrongly matched? Some of you are saying D, some of you are saying B. Which is wrongly matched is the question, not correctly matched. What is polysiphonia? Polysiphonia, red algae. Do red algae have flagellated gametes? No, they don't. So that is the correct answer. Brown algae zoospores have two flagella, correct. Chlorella is a unicellular organism, correct. Markantia has gemma cups, that is also correct. What is wrongly matched is option A. So the correct answer to this question is option A. Only two of you all have answered it correctly. Why is that so? Sabrina and Abhishek only. Sky Upper, I think that's how you want to be called. To join the quiz, you have to enroll in Unity. It is present as a pinned comment in this chat box. So you can enroll there, and the correct option you have to type in the chat box. Okay. Many of you have answered it as A. I wonder why it is not showing here. Okay. Let's see. Here's our next question. Very simple, direct question. Which of the following provides peat? Sargassum, sphagnum, spirulina, polytrichum. Very, very simple question. The correct answer is sphagnum, option B. 90% of you all have answered correctly. Let's move on to our next question. This is an interesting question. In Funaria, which is a moss, 20 chromosomes are present in rhizoids. Then the number of chromosomes in Archegonia, seta and foot will be. Rhizoids have 20 chromosomes. Then the number of chromosomes in Archegonia, seta and foot will be. I'm getting a mixture here, A, B, C, everything I'm getting. Funaria, dominant phase is gametophytic, right? So if the rhizoids have 20 chromosomes, then N is equal to 20. Haploid number is 20, right? What will be the number of chromosomes in Archegonia? Where is Archegonia produced? Archegonia is a sex organ. It is produced in the gametophyte itself. So Archegonia also is going to be N, which is 20. What is seta and foot? They are parts of the sporophyte. How is the sporophyte produced? From the zygote. How is the zygote formed? Two haploid cells fusing. So if the zygote is diploid, the sporophyte is diploid, the parts of the sporophyte also will be diploid, right? So seta and foot are 2n, which is 40, right? So Archegonia is 20, seta and foot are 40. The correct answer here is option A. Any confusion here? Only two students have answered it correctly. Any question here? Any doubts here? I hope not. Let's move on to our next question. Here is a diagram based question. I found it very interesting. Let's see how many of you will answer correctly. Given is a picture of Bryophyte. The correct ploidy levels of the indicated structures are. So you have A here. A is the seta. D is the capsule. C is the leaf-like structures. B is your rhizoids. What is the ploidy? You have to tell me. Leaf-like structures and rhizoids, both of these are haploid. They are part of the gametophytic phase. Capsule and seta, both of these are diploid because they are part of the sporophytic phase. So A is 2n, B is n, C is n, D is 2n. So it's n, it's 2n, n, n, 2n. The correct answer is option C. Any doubts here? The correct answer here is option C. Oh, none of you have answered correctly. There should be some glitch with the poll because I saw some people had answered C. Abhishek, you don't write C, 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 C. Just type C once. Maybe if you're typing it too many times, it's not picking it probably. Okay. So is this question clearly understood? Next chapter would be morphology of flowering plants. That will be handled by Chaitra ma'am. Okay. All right. Now let's move on. Here is our next question. In liverworts, gemme are non-green multicellular vegetative structures, green unicellular asexual buds, non-green unicellular vegetative buds, green multicellular asexual buds. Majority of you have answered it as correct, option D as correct answer. It is the correct answer. So majority of you have answered correctly. It is green, multicellular and asexual. So the correct answer to this question is option D. Now, let's take a look at this question. Very interesting. Which of the following is the correct sequence of steps involved in life cycle of liverworts if we start from its dominant phase? What is the dominant phase in liverworts? It is gametophyte. So you have to start with C. There are only two options that are starting with C, so you can right away eliminate option A and B. After C, you have D and B. What is D? What is B? D is syngamy, B is gametogenesis. First, gametogenesis should happen, gametes should form, only then syngamy can happen. So after C, you should have B, right? So this is incorrect. Gametophyte undergoes gametogenesis, gametes form, syngamy or fusion will take place. After fusion takes place, zygote is formed as a result of syngamy. What does the zygote develop into? Zygote develops into the sporophyte. Within the sporophyte, some cells undergo meiosis, which is A, and give rise to the spore, which is G. So the correct answer to this question is option D. How many of you found it interesting? 40% of you all have answered correctly. Some of you have got confused. Is it clear now? We start off with the gametophyte. In gametophyte, gametogenesis happens. Gametes form, they fuse, syngamy, zygote is formed. Zygote undergoes mitotic cell division to form the sporophyte. Within the sporophyte, some cells undergo meiosis to produce the spores. Okay. Hi Zuhaira. Good evening. Is it evening? Is it afternoon? What is it? Hi Shivam. So now let's move on and talk about some pteridophytes. Pteridophytes have a lot of advancements when compared to bryophytes. Let's see what they are. Okay. What are the two groups of pteridophytes? In algae, we have red algae, brown algae, green algae. In bryophytes, you have liverworts and mosses. In pteridophytes, you have ferns and horsetails. Ferns you would have seen, they are very pretty leaves that are used in flower decoration and all of that. Okay, so ferns and horsetails. What are some uses of pteridophytes? They have many medicinal uses and they are also used as soil binders. They are frequently grown as ornamental plants because, like I mentioned, it produces very beautiful leaves. One advancement over bryophytes here is that this is the first group of plants to have vascular tissue, xylem and phloem. But still, these plants are not found everywhere. Their distribution is restricted because they require very cold and damp and shady places to grow. Over here, the main plant body is sporophyte. This also shows haplodiploidic life cycle, but the main plant body is a sporophyte. Another advancement here is that here the plant body is very well differentiated into true root stems and leaves. In algae and bryophytes, it was thalloid. You do not have true root stems and leaves. You do not have vascular tissues. Over here, the advancement is that you have true root stems and leaves and you have vascular tissue. Okay. So, yeah, this is another advancement which you should remember. Sometimes the leaves of these are very small, as in the case of Selaginella. They are called microphyls. Phyl means leaf, micro means small. Small leaves is microphyll. Ferns have very elaborate large leaves. They are called macrophyls. Some of these leaves, okay, so let's understand this here. The main plant body here. Pay attention, all of you. Don't lose focus. In pteridophytes, main plant body is sporophyte. Okay. Sporophyte will have leaves, true leaves. Some of these leaves bear sporangia. Now, what are sporangia? Sporangia are structures that will produce spores. Whichever leaves bear sporangia, such leaves are called sporophyll. Remember, phyll means leaf. If that leaf bears sporangia, we call it sporophyll. Okay? Leaves bearing sporangia are called sporophylls. Sometimes in some plants, what happens is, as in the case of Equisetum and Selaginella, many such leaves will be present. Okay? Many such sporophylls will be present, which are leaves that contain sporangia. I am going to draw sporangia as these dots here. They are the sporangia. Many such leaves will spirally arrange or coil around an axis and form cone-like structures. Cone are also called strobili. Strobilus is singular, strobili is plural. Selaginella and Equisetum. Priyanshi is asking for a break. Gautami is asking for a break. In fact, I have to finish this by 4 o'clock because I have to go pick my son from school. So I want to wrap this up as soon as possible. Otherwise, this chapter will remain incomplete. Okay? So you can go grab a quick snack and come back and sit and watch it. Are you all hungry? Did you all not have lunch? I am the one who's talking the entire time. You're simply sitting and listening and you are tired. Selaginella and Equisetum. Okay. So within these cones, sporangia will be there. The sporangia will produce spores. Yeah. So these spores will develop into the gametophyte. What do the spores form? The spores will form. The sporangia will release spores. These are your spores. The spores will germinate and form the gametophyte. Compared to the sporophyte, the gametophyte is very small, inconspicuous. Okay? It is very small and inconspicuous. Compared to the sporophyte, it's very small in size. Also, it requires very moist, damp conditions to grow. Okay. This is called a prothallus. If a plant produces only one type of spore, only one type of prothallus will be formed. On this prothallus, both antheridium and archegonium will be formed. Antheridium will produce antherozoids. They will swim in a film of water, reach the archegonium, fertilize the egg, form the zygote. Zygote again develops into the sporophyte. Is that clear? The spores develop into a gametophyte which is very small and inconspicuous, but it is multicellular and free living. It is mostly photosynthetic. Of course, if it is free living and not dependent on the sporophyte, it has to be photosynthetic, right? That is called the prothallus. And this prothallus requires cool, damp and shady places to grow. This is also haplodiplontic life cycle. Bryophytes is also haplodiplontic life cycle. What is common in both these? In both bryophytes and pteridophytes, both sporophytic and gametophytic phases were multicellular. What is different in bryophytes and pteridophytes? In bryophytes, dominant plant body was gametophyte. In pteridophytes, dominant plant body is your sporophyte. What is the second difference? In bryophytes, the sporophyte is dependent on the dominant gametophyte. But in pteridophytes, the gametophyte is not dependent on the dominant sporophyte. Gametophyte has independent existence. It has chlorophyll containing cells that are capable of photosynthesizing. It lives separately from the sporophyte. Okay, so that is the difference between gametophyte, that is the difference between bryophytes and pteridophytes. Is that clear? Both of them show haplodiplontic life cycle because sporophyte and gametophyte are multicellular. In bryophytes, dominant phase is gametophytic. Sporophyte depends on gametophyte. In pteridophytes, dominant phase is sporophytic. Gametophyte does not depend on the sporophyte. Is it clear so far? If yes, please let me know in the comment section. Give me a thumbs up so that I can move on. Gametophyte and sporophyte are both independent in pteridophytes. In bryophytes, sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. Over here, the gametophyte itself is called the prothallus. It is very small, heart-shaped, cute little thing. Okay. Alright, now let's move on. Like I already mentioned, the gametophytes bear male and female sex organs. They are called antheridia and archegonia. Water is required for fertilization here as well. What else did we miss? Yeah, over here I told you, if the plant produces one type of spore, one type of gametophyte will be produced. But there are some genera like Selaginella and Salvinia where one sporophyte produces two types of spores. We call them heterosporous. If it is heterosporous like Selaginella and Salvinia, you will have two types of spores produced. One is the microspore and the other one is the megaspore. The microspore will give rise to a male gametophyte and the female megaspore will give rise to the female gametophyte. So you have a separate male prothallus and a separate female prothallus. In the male prothallus, you will have production of antheridium and in female prothallus, you will have archegonium. Antheridium produces antherozoid. Within the archegonium, egg cell is produced. This is the case if there is production of two types of spores. If there are two types of spores, then two types of gametophytes will be produced. In majority of pteridophytes, it is homosporous, which means it produces only one type of spore. Because it produces only one type of spore, only one type of prothallus is formed. Within the same prothallus, male and female sex organs will be found. But if like Selaginella and Salvinia, If like Selaginella and Salvinia, 2 types of spores are produced, then 2 different gametophytes will be formed, male prothallus and female prothallus. I hope it is clear so far. Okay. Yeah. So here after the fusion happens, zygote is formed. The zygote will develop into the embryo and eventually the embryo will develop into the sporophytic plant body. Okay. One very important thing that you should remember about pteridophytes, I will put a 5-star here. Whenever there is hunger pangs are calling, call your mother, she will deliver it to your study room. Female gametophytes over here, whenever it is heterosporous, the female gametophytes, I told you it will be separate, right? Male and female will be separate, I just told you. Where did I write it? Did I lose it? Okay, so it will be separate. Whatever female whatever female gametophyte is there, this female gametophyte will not have independent existence. The female gametophyte will be retained on the parent sporophyte itself, very similar to what happens in angiosperms. In angiosperms, major plant body we see is sporophyte. Within that, the embryo sac or the female gametophyte, right, that will be retained within the sporophyte. It is not present outside the sporophytic plant. Very similarly, even here, the female gametophyte is retained within the parent sporophyte. Okay, male gametophyte has independent existence, female gametophyte does not have, where only in heterosporous species like Selaginella and Salvinia. This is a very, very important event in evolution of plants because this is the precursor to the seed habit that we see in gymnosperms and angiosperms. This is a very, very important point that you all have to remember regarding pteridophytes. Okay, now let's move on. In pteridophytes, you have 4 different classes. You have Psilopsida, Lycopsida, Sphenopsida, Pteropsida. Examples are given. Psilopsida, very simple, Psilotum. Lycopsida, one easy example, Lycopodium is there, but Selaginella is also there. Sphenopsida, example, Equisetum. Pteropsida includes all of your ferns like Bryopteris, Pteris and Adiantum. Okay? Yes, Abhishek, you're correct. Okay? Now, let's move on to gymnosperms. After that, we will solve questions. Okay? So, what are gymnosperms? Gymnosperms, what does the term mean? Gymno means naked, sperma means seed. Whichever plant produces naked seeds, they are called gymnosperms. Naked seeds means what are seeds generally covered by? Seeds are generally covered by the fruit, right? By the fruit wall. So what becomes the fruit wall? The ovary becomes the fruit wall. If the seeds are not covered by the fruit wall, then you call it naked seeds. So gymnosperms are plants that produce seeds, but those seeds are not covered by fruit wall. Why is it not covered by fruit wall? Fruit wall is formed from ovary. Ovary is part of flower. In gymnosperms, flowers are not there. So obviously, there will be no covering for the seed. Okay. So typically, here ovules are not enclosed by ovary wall. They will be exposed. Before fertilization also, after fertilization also, it will be exposed. Okay. Yeah. So in gymnosperms, you don't find herbs at all. Very short plants are not found at all. You mostly find medium-sized trees, tall trees and shrubs. They do not produce flowers, but they're very beautiful. Christmas tree is an example for your gymnosperms, right? One of the tallest trees in the world, which is the Sequoia dendron giganteum, sequoia tree, it is a gymnosperm. It is a very beautiful tree. Apparently, to go around the trunk of that one tree, 10 people can go around, and they've made tunnels carved inside that tree where cars can pass in. Okay, so yeah, flowers are absent. Yes, it is the Californian redwood tree. All right. So those are some general characters. Now gymnosperms, main plant body is sporophytic. Okay. Here we do find vascular tissue, xylem, phloem and They are growing very tall. Obviously, they will need xylem and phloem for conduction of water and food and all of that, without which they can't grow so tall, right? I have seen those trees in need for spin. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, this is an example for a diplontic life cycle. I'll explain to you what this diplontic life cycle is. Okay, but before that, let's understand some general characters. Roots, true stem, true leaves are present. We'll discuss about each of these. First, let's start with roots. The type of roots that we find in gymnosperms are generally tap roots. Sometimes these roots are associated with other organisms. For example, in Pinus, roots are associated with fungi and they form mycorrhizal associations. Okay? In Pinus, remember these examples? Mycorrhizal associations are formed. What is the use of mycorrhizal associations? It's a mutually beneficial relationship where the fungus helps in better absorption of water and minerals and gives it to the plant. In return, the plant gives the fungus food. Another symbiotic association that we see here is in Cycas. In Cycas, the roots are associated with nitrogen-fixing blue-green algae or nitrogen-fixing cyanobacteria. So there, the roots are called coralloid roots. Over here, these cyanobacteria or blue-green algae act as biofertilizers and help in providing nitrogen to the plant. In return, they get shelter and food. Okay, so these are things that you should remember. You know it's nitrogen fixing, but most students forget that it is cyanobacteria or blue-green algae and not bacteria. Okay, now let's talk about the stems. In some plants, the stems are unbranched, like our coconut tree has no branches, right? Similarly, Cycas plant also has no branches. So sometimes it can be unbranched or sometimes it can be branched, like Pinus, Cedrus, your Christmas tree, all of these are branched, right? And the leaves can be simple, as in the case of Pinus, or pinnately compound, as in the case of Cycas. In Cycas, the pinnate leaves persist for a few years. Yeah, it has a long life, correct. Gymnosperms are usually found in the temperate regions where there is extreme conditions, too much wind, too much cold and all of that, right? So these leaves are very well adapted to survive even in those extremely harsh conditions, okay, where there is extremes of temperature, humidity and wind. So in order to, if the leaf is very broad, if there is rain or snow or too much wind, it can tear off. In order to avoid that, they will have very thin needle-like leaves. That will reduce the surface area, it will not tear, and also transpiration is reduced. Okay, in ginkgo you have a fan-shaped, bilobed, heart-shaped leaves, correct? Yeah, another adaptation is they will have very thick cuticle and sunken stomata. That will also help in reducing the rate of transpiration. So these are a couple of important points that you should remember. Over here we've spoken about 3 examples, Cycas and Pinus and Cedrus. You should remember all of them. Okay. Now, heterospore, yeah. In pteridophytes, I told you that majority of species are homosporous, they produce only one type of spore, and Salvinia selaginella are few exceptions which produces 2 types of spores. But in gymnosperms, all plants are heterosporous without any exception. They will produce 2 types of spores, microspores that are male spores and megaspores that are female spores. Where are these spores produced? They are produced inside sporangia. Where are these sporangia present? They are associated with certain leaves. What do we call those leaves? We call them sporophylls. Similar to how in pteridophytes we saw the formation of cones, even in gymnosperms we see the formation of cones. We call them strobili or sometimes lacs also. So you have separate male cones, separate female cones. Within the male cones, male microsporophylls will be present. In the microsporophylls, you will have microsporangia. Within the microsporangia, microspores are produced. In the female cone, you will have megasporophylls. Within the megasporophyll, megasporangia is there. In the megasporangia, megaspores are produced. Okay. Lax is another word for, you can say strobilus or cone. Okay. Now, what is the male gametophyte? Similar to angiosperms, even in gymnosperms, male gametophyte is a pollen grain. Pollen grain bears very few cells, right? Inside the pollen grains, you will find the male gametes. What is the female gametophyte? Female gametophyte is multicellular. Similar to how we saw in Selaginella and Salvinia, female gametophyte is formed but is not released from the sporophyte. It is retained within the sporophyte itself. Within the female gametophyte, you can see the presence of archegonia. It might be 2 or more in number. These archegonia are present within the seed. Seed itself is the megasporangium, right? I'm sorry, ovule. Within the ovule will have a micropyle. Near the micropyle, 2 or more archegonia will be present. Within each archegonia, you will have an egg cell. Okay? So, by means of wind currents, these pollen grains will be dispersed. Pollen grain inside there is male gamete. It will come and fall near the micropyle, form a pollen tube, release the male gametes. Fertilization will happen. Zygote will form, that will develop into the sporophyte again. Okay, so this is basically what happens in the life cycle of gymnosperms. Why do we call this diplontic life cycle? In both angiosperms and gymnosperms, we see diplontic life cycle. Why is it called diplontic life cycle? Because in both gymnosperms and angiosperms, majority of the life or the dominant phase is the sporophytic phase, which is diploid. That is why it's called diplontic. Gametophyte is present, but gametophyte is very small and it is barely of a few cells. Female gametophyte is dependent on the sporophyte also. Alright, yes, it's called anemophily, correct, that is wind pollination. So that is how alternation of generation happens here. That is why it's called diplontic life cycle. Okay, so some of these gymnosperms like pinus, within the same plant, both male cone and female cone will be produced. So that is called monoecious. That is an example for a monoecious gymnosperm. Cycas will have 2 separate plants, a male plant and a female plant. Male plant produces male cone, female plant produces female cone. That's why it's called dioecious. Okay. Male and female gametophytes here do not have independent free living existence. They remain within the sporangia, especially the female gametophyte will remain within the sporangia and it is retained on the sporophyte. However, the male gametophyte will be dispersed. It is a pollen grain, right? So these pollen grains, like I already mentioned, is carried in air currents and they come in contact with the opening of the ovule. I already mentioned this. Then fertilization will happen. Zygote will develop into the embryo and the ovules will transform into your seeds. Ovules are nothing but your megasporangium. You already know that, right? So that's about gymnosperms. Now let's talk about angiosperms. In gymnosperms, you don't have a lot of examples. In gymnosperms, you have Pinus, Cycas, Cedrus, Ginkgo biloba. Pinus is branched, monoecious. Cycas is unbranched, dioecious. Cedrus is branched, that is an example for branched, and Ginkgo is a very ancient, it's called a living fossil, that is also an example for female gametophyte is not known as endosperm, female gametophyte is called embryo sac. Okay. So that's about gymnosperms. Now let's talk about angiosperms. In angiosperms, you have 3 entire chapters dedicated for them. One characteristic feature of angiosperm is that it produces flowers. Okay, so they have specialized structures for called flowers. One of the parts of the flower called ovary will transform into the fruit after fertilization. So in gymnosperms, you find flowers and after fertilization, it will transform into fruits as well. Currently, the most dominant type of plants that we find on earth, most advanced type of plant that we find on earth is your angiosperms. So this is a very large group. You can find them pretty much everywhere on land, in water. You can find them in all kinds of habitats. And the size is highly variable. Some of them are very small. For example, Wolffia is the smallest. And the tallest angiosperm is eucalyptus, which can grow greater than 100 meters in height sometimes. Okay. So what is the uses of angiosperms? We have many uses. They produce us with flowers, perfumes. Flowers, say we get perfumes and all of that, right? So you get food, fodder, fuel, medicines, and very many commercially important products. How do we classify angiosperms? Into 2 groups, monocotyledons and dicotyledons. Monocots are plants that have a single cotyledon. Dicotyledons are those plants that have 2 cotyledons. That's all we need to know about angiosperms. Now let's quickly solve a couple of questions. All members are monoecious except, which is not monoecious? Which is not monoecious? Which is dioecious here? It is Marchantia, right? So the correct answer to this question is option A. Around 78% of you all have answered correctly. Abhishek has answered the fastest, quickest. All right. So correct answer here is option A. Now let's take a look at another question here based on pteridophytes. I mean, it's a mixed question. In pteridophytes, main plant body is thalloid gametophyte, thalloid sporophyte, gametophyte which is differentiated into root, stem and leaves, sporophyte which is differentiated into root, stem and leaves. Option D is the correct answer. Right, over here the correct answer is option D. %89% of you all have answered correctly. Here is our next question. Which of the following statements is correct? Ovules are not enclosed by ovary wall in gymnosperms. Yes, they are not. Selaginella is heterosporous while Salvinia is homosporous. No, Salvinia is also heterosporous. Stems are usually unbranched in both Cycas and Cedrus. In Cycas, it is unbranched. In Cedrus, it is branched. Horsetails are gymnosperms. No, horsetails and ferns are pteridophytes. So what is the correct answer here? The correct answer is option A. All of you have answered correctly. Brilliant. Let's take a look at our next question. In which of the following gametophyte is not independent and free living? Gametophyte is not independent and free living. Gametophyte is not independent. Funaria and Marchantia, these are bryophytes. Pteris obviously is a pteridophyte. In both bryophytes and pteridophytes, gamete has free living existence. Pinus is a gymnosperm. In gymnosperm, gametophyte does not have free living existence. So the correct answer to this question is option A. 100% of you all have answered correctly. That's brilliant. Next question. All statements are true for both ferns and conifers except true stem, leaves and roots in the main plant body, independent free living existence of gametophyte, have vasculature, oogamous sexual reproduction. It is true for both ferns and conifers except both have true roots, stems and leaves, yes. Gametophyte free living existence, no. Both of them have xylem, phloem, oogamous, correct. So the correct answer here is option B. Okay, most of you all have answered it correctly. Here is our next question. Ferns and mosses resemble in possessing. Ferns and mosses, do they have large size true leaves? No, ferns don't even have true leaves. I'm sorry, mosses don't even have true leaves. Unicellular rhizoids. Mosses have multicellular rhizoids. Ferns have true roots. No. Haplodiplontic life cycle pattern. Yes. Gametic meiosis in life cycle. No. When gametes are formed, it's mitosis itself, right? Because it forms from the gametophyte. Meiosis happens during spore formation. So it's sporic meiosis, not gametic meiosis. The correct answer is option B. Very few students have answered. Where is the confusion? Hey, wait. Did I mark it as B? It should have been C. I think I made a mistake. I'm sorry. C was the correct answer here. Yeah. Here is our next question. Gametophytes, algae, bryophytes and pteridophytes resemble each other in which one of the following feature? Gametophytic plant body? No. Dependence on water for fertilization? Yes. Presence of vascular tissues? No. Algae, bryophytes don't have vascular tissues. Presence of embryo? No. Algae doesn't have embryo. In pteridophytes, it's not gametophytic, it's sporophytic plant body. So the correct answer to this question here is option B. 80% of you all have answered correctly. That's brilliant. That shows you've understood the concept very well. Here is our last question for the day. Gametophytic plant body is non-vascular in. Gametophytic plant body does not have supply of xylem and phloem. It is non-vascular in algae and liverworts, mosses and ferns, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Algae and liverworts, as it is, they don't have vascular tissue also, correct? Mosses and ferns. In mosses, you don't have vascular tissue, but in ferns, you have vascular tissue. But the question is, in ferns, in gametophyte, is there vascular tissue? In the prothallus, is there vascular tissue? There isn't. Here, they are clearly asking, in gametophytic plant body, is there vascular tissue? There isn't. Gymnosperms and angiosperms, both of them have vascular tissues, but in the gametophyte, do you find vascular tissue? You don't. So, the correct answer to this question is option D, all of these. Only few people, only one person, Venkata Pushpa Harika, has answered correctly. The rest of you have not answered it correctly. Now, quickly, let's take a look at our leaderboard. First, we have Santosh Pitambari. He's been very active since the start. I think even in the previous lecture, he was very active. That just shows your commitment and discipline. Congratulations, Santosh. Keep going. I want to see the same enthusiasm in the last class as well. Akash, Sabrina, Priyanshi, Praveen, Gautami, Suresh, Venkata Pushpa, Raghul, Abhishek, Arpita, Bimal, Sukh, Tuhin, Vedam, Ayush, Aradhya, Shivkumar, Praju, Artistic Alliance, Ujjwal Chaudhary, Sumit, Sujal, Bhuvnesh, Dilip, just some guy, Ashutosh, Roger, Shri. Oh my god, the list is very long. Whoever participated, brilliant. Congratulations and all the very best. There are a couple of questions in this PPT which I have not discussed in today's session given the lack of time. I am going to mark the correct answers to those questions and leave it in your notes. If you have any doubts in any of those questions, you can put the slide number and ask that doubt in the comment section. I will answer your questions. How does that sound? Alright, there are a couple of questions which I could not discuss in class because of the time constraint. I'm going to leave it on the notes. I'm going to tick the correct answer and leave it as it is. Try to solve them. If you have any doubts while solving them, you can put the slide number there and ask your doubt in the comment section. I will answer them as soon as possible. Have you understood? Thanks so much, Gautami. I'm glad you found it helpful. So with this, I'm going to sign off from today's session. I will meet you very soon with another chapter. Until then, don't get distracted. Don't lose your focus. You have one dream. Keep your eye focused on that, which is your stethoscope and your doctor's coat, right? So all the very best. See you very soon. Thank you very much.